Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Millis Finance Committee. My name is John Lord, Chair of the Millis Finance Committee. Today is April 3rd, 2024 at 7 p.m. And why don't we go around and introduce ourselves, starting off to my left.
Sarah Reyes. Jody Gerson.
Joyce Boyardi.
Peter Underhill.
Michael Crone.
Kathy McInnes.
Jen Zaretsky.
Pete Berube.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Just a regular reminder that not only can you catch us live right now on your local access at home, but you can also watch us on demand at YouTube. And all the material that we have is online as well, so please take a look at that. And also as a friendly reminder for not only the members up here, but also our guests to speak into the microphone directly so that we can have a good recording of the meeting as well. So with that, why don't we start off with the Board of Health. Board of Health wants to come up and join us.
Good evening, John McVeigh, Director, Board of Health.
Closer. Thank you.
Good evening, John McVeigh, Director, Board of Health. Thank you, Finance Committee members.
Sarah Ward, the public health nurse.
If you want to start off and going through your notes, the narrative, and the budget, it's however you want to proceed.
I've mentioned this before, but we're a pretty limited budget in comparison to most budgets in town. Just as a reiterating what the public health function is, we license, we do permits, we do inspections, food inspections, housing inspections, general nuisance inspections. We get involved with public health, emergency planning, communicable disease control. Obviously, we know about the pandemic, so we know about that
Yep.
avenue, which we're involved with. Vaccinations and other public health matters that come up. So it's an area where it's very generalized, and there's a variety of tasks that we're mandated to do under Mass General Law.
Makes me ask, is there anything pressing right now, health-wise, out there that we should be aware of?
I haven't
coming
seen
off
it.
of COVID?
Knock on wood. I'm hoping that it stays quiet.
Okay, good. Didn't know how nervous I should get. Do you want to walk us through some of the highlights from the past year?
Our budget is relatively the same, except for contractual increases in salaries.
Okay.
We really don't see any increases at all in the operational line or expense line items, from my understanding. And so we're pretty status quo. We haven't, we're not asking for anything more or anything less.
Great. One question I had was on the non-tax funding, some of the revolving account for vaccines, medical services. Can you, some of those numbers, have they changed much over the years? Or you have a variety of things here in terms of food inspections, rabies clinic, Metro West shared services?
No, those have been pretty steady over the years. We have, again, a series of revolving accounts. The vaccine, medical expense account, the food, which pays for food inspections, and the licenses go into that account. We do have a PHEP account, which is, I'm pretty sure that's dried up. That was from the state, and it was designed for communication accounts for cell phones and data. Rabies clinic, that's if we do put on rabies clinics and we can find a vet, we can use that as payment in that direction after we collect fees. So all those revolving accounts that we have been very consistent over the last, I'd say, 20-some odd years. And, they serve a function, a much-needed function.
Perfect. You have a question?
Yes,
Go
I
ahead.
do. With respect to vaccinations, with CVS and the others now doing most of them, I know years ago you used to have a lot of clinics. do you find that you don't have to do as much anymore as you once did?
Historically, that is the case. I mean, historically, if you look back, 15, 20 years ago, that there was definitely, the local public health was a mainstay for vaccinations and immunizations. That has changed, but we do still see a need in town for that, and maybe I could, if Sarah, if you wanted to talk maybe a little bit on that. There's definitely still a need for that in a community. Although the convenience, you are correct, is there for some of the private companies doing the vaccinations and immunizations today.
So I think, like John said, historically, public health departments used to do a lot of vaccines, but with CVS and whatnot, a lot of people are going to them also. I know since I've been here since 2021, and we've been kind of steady in the amount that we give out. We do a lot of town hall employees, fire, school employees, things like that. It's a majority of our vaccine right now.
You still do free vaccines for the town? We used to bring our kids here all the time.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
they're still free.
They're
Yep.
still yeah, okay.
Yep. Mhm.
Interesting. Good. I don't have any more questions. Does anyone else? I think. Go ahead, Pete.
Hi. Could you kindly go through the description of opioid funds? And specifically, I'm just real curious about the perspective on the Narcan kits and the placement of those, where they're going to be placed. Just to maybe go a little bit more in depth, how those locations were chosen, and then also is Millis's proposed use of the Narcan, or excuse me, of the opioid use funding consistent with other towns that you've perhaps networked with, and just describe that to us a little bit?
Yeah, Sarah, do you want to get involved with that? So,
So this was drafted up prior to us being able to get the Narcan boxes provided by the district attorney's office. So that was those actually just came to the town, and they've been put up in the town hall and the schools. So that would be taken out of this budget, because that was new since we drafted this up, that they were going to provide those for us. And then we also are part of, it's called the Community Narcan Program through the state. So any Narcan that I obtain from the state is free of charge, and I am able to distribute that to any resident that would like to receive it, and with the proper training also.
Of course, considering protection of, people's identities and stuff, could you just generally summarize how much Narcan is distributed by your office?
We haven't had a great deal, honestly, so far. We've done a couple of trainings, and I don't have the exact number of doses, but I started it back in November, and we've given out maybe 8 doses so far. I was also on maternity leave for a few months, so that kind of slowed the process.
I guess I'm surprised to see that the schools, especially Clyde Brown, would be a distribution point. I mean, hopefully it's there and it never gets used, but that does kind of surprise me to see that.
So that, I wouldn't say it's a distribution place. That's where they have the boxes, so with the AED kits, so that we hope to never use an AED kit. We also hope to never have to use the Narcan either.
Right, so these locations would be where the AED kits are currently, right?
Yes.
Because there's 29 total AED kits?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the locations were decided, we had met with an advisory group and with police, fire, and a couple other members, and we decided that those were the best places for them to be put to start with.
Perfect.
And then in regards to, I know your other question was about how other towns are spending the funding. And I've been I recently sat in on a conference with the state last week, actually, about the funds. And I think we're pretty consistent with how other towns are spending the funding so far. Yeah.
Great. Anyone else? No? Thank you very much for presenting to us and sharing your information, and like you said, it's pretty straightforward, so no need to complicate it, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
You too. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the school. School budget and presentation.
Call him when we need him.
Yeah.
Is there a way to project the slides or?
Is there a way to project the slides? Jody, how should we do that?
Deirdre would have it.
Can you plug right into that? Or, oh, yeah. Do you want the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah. Deirdre, could you please show the presentation for tonight on the computer? Boom. What else do you guys need?
Thank you. Good evening. Okay. So, first of all, thank you for having us tonight. And I know we met with you back a few weeks ago. Since then, we've had our public hearing for the budget, which we did on March 27th. And as the slides show with the timeline, we're in that March to May phase where we're presenting to this committee and looking at adjustments and fine-tuning things. And we'll keep doing that until town meeting, when we will be proposing a balanced budget at town meeting, and then submitting the final redraft budget to the school committee in June for FY '25. If we could go to the next slide, please, Deidre. And when we develop the budget, we have certain guiding principles to support the highest quality educational programs and services possible, fund proposed curriculum development initiatives, instructional resources, enhanced programs, and support services to meet students' individual needs, provide staffing levels that support reasonable class sizes at all levels, maintain the current level of services provided, support salary adjustments per contractual obligations, fund state and federal mandates, and the maintenance of and capital improvements to the school buildings and grounds to support our programming and the safety of our students. So it's with these things in mind that we construct our budget. If we could go to the next slide, please. This slide just gives a historical sense of our enrollment, our current enrollment. This is actually a little bit inaccurate. I think we have a couple more kids at Clyde Brown since last week. But, so I think we have 603 or 604 students at Clyde Brown, 270 in the middle school, 317 in the high school, for a pre-K to 12 district total of, I think that would make us 1190, 1191. And then our TIES program, which is our transition program for students aged 18 to 22 who have special needs and receive vocational and life training. We have 6 students in that program, and that program is housed in Norfolk. And as you can see from the bar graph there, we were experiencing a decline in enrollment, and the trough was about 2020, 2021, and then a slight uptick. The 23, 24 population is down slightly. The main reason for that decline is because with the cuts last year, we had to eliminate a preschool program. And by eliminating one preschool class, that's the 20, 25 student difference in the overall enrollment for this year. And our projections, if we could go to the next slide, please. Our projections for the next 10 years or so is slight growth, about 4%, 4.6% growth over the next 10 years. And of course, with the building in town, the school population, that could impact our enrollment. And I'm looking at this, and I'm not sure if I can control this as well, but maybe not. And
Yeah.
please, during this, if you have any questions, feel
Yeah,
free to
do you want us to ask as we go along here?
You can ask as you go along, or if you want to hold off,
Yeah,
I can do either.
I think it would be great if we asked just as the content comes up to ask
Sure.
questions. Does anyone have any questions?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
For the TIES program, are those Millis residents or is that school choice?
Those are Millis
Millis
residents.
residents, thank you.
It's a program, 18 to 22. It wouldn't be open to school choice. However, one of the benefits of the program is if there's a district with a student who would benefit from that program, we receive tuition for that. So we have one student in there from another town, and we receive tuition. So it's and the tuition is in excess of what we would get for a choice kid. So it kind of helps us pay for the program.
Pete has a question.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Could you briefly describe your methodology to calculate, projected enrollment?
Yeah, the projected enrollment, I don't do it. It's the New England School Development Council does an annual report, and they look at births, historical data, and they project it out from there. I think if you wanted to see the whole NESDEC report, it's included on the project website for the middle high school project, because that's an important part of, planning for that facility.
Thank you.
If we could go to the next slide, please. And this is just our class sizes. And again, pre-K is down this year because we have one fewer classrooms. And so with the enrollment by grade, you can see that there's certainly fluctuation in the numbers from a low of 64 students in grade 10, a high of 102 in grade 6. I'd also call your attention to the,
I'll just interrupt. Deirdre, if you could just go back one slide, Deirdre.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
So I'd call your attention to the low grades, K1 and 2. These numbers are pretty high. These numbers also impact how many choice students we can accept at those grade levels, because if there's no room in those classes, we wind up graduating more choice students than we can take in. And that's happened over the last few years, which has caused a decline in our choice enrollment.
I got a couple questions on the slide. So are those numbers, K1, 2, 3, 4, are those traditionally in that range, though, in the 90s, mid-90s there?
It's a little higher.
It's a little-
It's
Okay.
yeah, Yeah, those class sizes are large.
Okay.
For those grade levels.
And not necessarily school choice at this point in time.
Right, there are some choice students in those classes, but not great
Smaller.
numbers. It's just what we can fit in.
Gotcha. And you might have said this, but the 64 dip is for what reason? Grade 10?
It's just that particular year,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
And we have, you can kind of see from the fluctuation, we have that from time to time.
Yep, thank you.
And if we go to the next slide, this is the average class sizes. And again, you can see in K1 and 2, the numbers are high. If you can imagine, 24 kids in a second grade class, there's a lot of action going on in there, and it's a lot of activity. It looks like we're going to have that for the next few years. I'd also call your attention to the grade 4 classroom, average size 24.75. Again, that's a high number. And part of the reason that number is so high is because we had to reduce the Clyde Brown staff by 1 teacher last year. What would have happened had we had that position is that teacher who was a 5th grade teacher who was laid off, that teacher would have moved to the 4th grade this year, and those class sizes would have been more manageable. For grades 6, 7, and 8, those are average class sizes in core academic classes. So, the core classes, English, language arts, math, science, social studies. There are smaller groups like special ed classes that are smaller by design, of course. And then at the high school level, those are the ranges for class size in core academic classes. So generally, we don't have core academic classes below 10 or 12 students. Sometimes with the nature of scheduling, you might have 2 sections of an English class. One section has 8 kids, the other section has 28, and try as you might as a principal or a scheduler in that building, you can't even them out. So we do have one English class this year with 8 students, and we also have a class with 30 students. We try and keep it below 30, but sometimes we have had to have classes of 30 and sometimes beyond 30. The average class size, if you were to walk into classes at random, would probably be 15 to 20 students.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Historically, I just I'm remembering when my children, and that was a long time ago, but when my kids went to school, the class sizes were larger then. So what has, each class, like a 4th
Right.
grade class had 30 kids, not 22, or,
Yeah, I would say the profile of students has changed since that time. Particularly with special education, we want to educate kids in the least restrictive environment. And so there are students in classrooms now that 20 years ago may not have been in a general education classroom. And we support those students in class. There are some pull-out services for those students. But a lot of what we do in the classrooms of 2024, it looks a lot different than what it looked like in 1994, 2004 even.
right, I just recall, but there were pullouts during that time.
Sure.
And there were special needs, and there were aides in the class with 30 students. So that's why I'm just curious as to when did a class size of 23 versus 30, that was 7 additional students, and they seem to get by. What changed that made it so that now you're requesting 20 and to 23?
Research indicates that those numbers are, students are better served in a classroom with, 20 kids compared to 30 kids. The teacher can provide more personal,
One-on-one.
one-on-one small group work, the types of things they're doing. It's not 30 kids sitting in rows looking at the teacher. It's, breakout groups and things like this, the teachers all over the
So
room.
the way of
there's
educating has
aides.
changed.
Certainly has, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there still, are there still parent volunteers in the school, in the elementary school that help? I know when my kids were at school, parents volunteered. I taught computers.
Yeah, no, we don't have parent volunteers in that sense. There are some parents come in who will help with running copies and things like that.
So
But
that's
generally
changed, too.
speaking, that's changed as well.
Maybe we could bring that back.
I got a question that's relevant for this slide, but if you want to defer to later, talking about the override and whether it passes or not. If it was not to pass, what would the impact be on class sizes, looking at this chart right here?
I will defer to later, but
Perfect.
basically, this would change.
Yeah, understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Significantly.
Yes.
Can I also just add one thing in terms of historical perspective, relatively short in some time period, but one thing on the class sizes, it has been, as Bob said, there's a lot of evidence in the education world that class sizes, especially in the elementary school, should really be closer to 20 than they are to 30. And the school committee of the district has worked hard to keep that and keep those ranges. And one of the things, again, as Bob alluded to, that we lost the ability to do last year is, in Millis, we get these ebbs and flows. So you get a year where you got 60 kids, the next year you get 100. Where at the elementary school, we were able to move a teacher around to kind of help even that out. While we've been able to do that, one thing that hasn't happened is it is not as if we've been hiring additional staff in order to bring class sizes down. We have not added multiple teachers in grades over the last 15 to 20 years in an effort to get our class sizes down.
No, I just was curious
Yeah,
as to what
but-
had changed,
but
because
Yeah.
I just, when
For
I'm.
clarity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The staffing has not
Yeah.
grown.
If we could go to the next slide. This, just some information on choice students. So with choice, we receive approximately $5,000 per choice student. That can change if a student choice is in and has particular needs, special education needs, or other needs that result in more cost to the district. That cost is passed on to the sending district.
Go ahead, Jen.
How is that tuition determined? Is the state set?
The
or-
state sets the
Okay.
rates,
It
yeah.
seems low, honestly.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it is
All right,
low,
yeah.
and it's like, here's an empty seat, you can get $0 for it, or you can
No, I get it. You might as
invite
well
someone
take it,
in,
but
we'll
it's-
take the $5,000. And honestly, choice students add to the diversity of our student body and, add to the culture of our schools.
Oh, I wasn't suggesting. we
Yeah,
get rid
oh,
of them. I was
no,
saying, how can we
no,
get more
yeah.
for them?
It would be,
That's what I was
great,
thinking.
right. It would be wonderful if they saw fit to increase the
Okay.
amount of
And is that
choice.
5,000 every district, or does it vary from district to
It's
district?
the same.
It's the same,
It's the
okay.
same.
I know, Mike, you had a question.
So if for some reason, the override doesn't pass, and class sizes will go up, but we'll still have 68 extra kids, which obviously would increase class size, would you consider taking school choice out?
Once a choice student once we accept a choice student, we own them. So if we get a kid in kindergarten, we have that kid is a Millis student all the way through till 12th
We were
grade.
told before that if there was a financial situation, that we didn't own them.
Close off the grade.
Let me clarify.
Closed off
You can
grade.
you can
Yeah.
close
Yeah,
off
please
grades
clarify.
from new students. We could also elect not to be a choice district for new students moving forward. But we can't kick 68 kids out of the district if
Right.
the override fails.
Once the children are in, they're in.
Right.
Yep.
And then if you decide to cap it, you have that choice.
Correct.
Still being a school choice school.
Right. We
Yeah.
could either elect to be school choice and cap, or close certain grades.
Yep.
Or we could not be a school choice school, but either way, you don't get rid of 68 kids if you.
Understood,
Yeah.
understood. That makes sense to everybody? Go ahead, Pete. Yep.
I had a question on the $5,000 per student. Has that number ever gone up? How long has it been $5,000?
As long as I can remember, I've been in the district for 17 years, and it's
I'm just
been
thinking of the large percentage that the state mandated we increase for special education. What was that, 14%? So their
Right.
costs went up 14%, but ours went up 0 apparently.
Yeah, yeah.
So it doesn't,
Something to
it
bring up to
doesn't
our
rhyme with
state reps.
inflation, huh?
Yeah.
Okay,
So people you vote
that's good
for.
to know. Is there, any-
Yeah,
go
one
ahead,
other
Mike, yeah,
question.
go ahead.
When you're calculating the per pupil cost, do you calculate in the 68 people that are on school choice?
Yes, yes, the state calculates the entire population,
Okay.
yeah.
So in that kind of same process, so how does the, I mean, I think I know this, but in terms of if there's less school choice kids coming in and that 333,000 goes down, that is funds that need to be seeked elsewhere in terms of replacing
Correct,
that.
exactly, right. So over the, like, you can see from that bar graph,
Yep.
we're at a high of 91 students in 17, 18.
Yep,
And so that we had significantly more money in choice to use, and we had teacher salaries coming out of choice and not out of the operating budget. But as that number declined, we had to take those salaries and put them into the operating budget.
good.
So are you saying then that it really doesn't cost $19,000 per student? I mean, if we have, that a choice student doesn't cost us more than $5,000?
No, we receive 5,000.
No, I understand
for a
that, but
choice
what
student.
what does a choice student cost us?
Same as a regular student.
Same
So
as that.
19,000.
Right, but it's not, if we didn't have the choice student, our per pupil expenditure would be the same, but we wouldn't have the $5,000 for that kid.
The per pupil cost would
Right,
actually
yeah,
be higher.
because we'd have
Well,
fewer
but-
kids.
You'd be dividing the same dollars over,
But if I could say that,
over a smaller amount.
well, so has there ever been an analysis of what it actually costs for a student in the school? Meaning there are costs per pupil. It just isn't like it's free. You can put 68 kids in there. It's really not going to cost anything. It costs something. Do we know what that cost is?
The costs are minor because you have the teacher there anyhow. The teacher's already being paid for. It's just there's an extra seat in that classroom. We fill that seat and get $5,000. The $5,000 doesn't, the teacher's salary has already been paid.
The incremental cost of a choice student coming in, the incremental cost to the district is minimal. Because if you got rid of those 68 if those 68 students didn't exist, it's not as if all of those kids are in one grade, and then you could eliminate a set of teachers. You really wouldn't be able to eliminate anybody, because all you're gonna do is take classes, for example, from 24 to 20. That's not enough to reduce the fourth grade staff from 4 to 3. That's just not, so the incremental cost of those students isn't 19,000, but, is it around 5,000? And maybe that's where the 5,000 came from, is because they take it and go, what's the incremental cost of bringing a student in? And it's gonna be negligible, and then should they adjust it every, decade? Sure. But, yeah, so the incremental cost isn't gonna be that. It's not gonna allow us to reduce staff to an extent that we'd be losing teachers for each grade.
So if our student population goes up by, say, another 20 students next year, there really wouldn't be any change in terms of instrumental cost in taking care of those kids?
No, not extensively, not,
Yeah, I mean, if 20 new Millis residents came in next year,
Right.
really,
If they were spread-
there'd be
if
no
they were-
difference in the budget.
Right, unless
Right.
they had particular needs and
Needs.
things.
or
Sure.
it was all
In one grade.
5-year-olds that were starting in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Pete, you had a question? No, you're good? Perfect, thank you for explaining that.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
is there any way to find out the 68, what grades they're in?
Yeah, we have that information. I don't have it with me, but I do an enrollment report every month at school committee, and that document is in the documents folder for that. So, I can provide that to the chair. And it's anywhere from, there are some grades that 1 or 2, and, some have been as high as 9. I don't know if we have 9 kids in one grade this year, but we've had that in the past. I think last year's graduating class had about 9 or 10 choice kids.
Thank you.
And on that same note, do you have demographics of where those kids are from?
We know the towns and.
Okay, is that on that same data? Same-
It's just numbers.
Okay.
But the towns, it's
Or
Medway,
surrounding
it's
towns, school choice.
Holliston,
Okay.
it's, towns in the area.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. Yes, go ahead, if you can come to the microphone, that would be great.
I wonder if the kids we take, if those towns have school choice.
Lisa Harden, 56 Walnut. I just have a question about the Millis residents who choose to go out. If we were to stop being a school choice town in terms of them coming in,
Yeah.
would that also stop Millis residents going out?
It would not.
wow.
Any student in any town is eligible to choice.
As long as choice is offered.
Right.
Right.
Mr. Chair?
And
Hang on, Pete, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask about Tri-County. Is that
Why don't we wait
where
on that, because
those
that's another
kids-
slide coming up.
those kids in here?
Tri-County's not,
It's,
Tri-County's not a choice.
I understand, but Tri-County's a slide coming up in the presentation.
yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
They're not in the.
They're not part of the school
Right,
choice.
they're not included in these numbers.
Does that answer your question?
Well, where are they? I mean, are they on this graph?
It's in, they're not, they're in like two more slides or so. Pete, you had a question?
Sure, I was holding on to it, but it really is in line with Lisa's first question in terms of choice. For understanding and discussion later during an override, that there are still choices to be made by parents at that point. Parents can choose to go back to their district if there's a material change in the level of service within Millis. And more additional Millis students can choice out if there are openings in other districts. And I just think we need to, at some point, acknowledge that, and this seems like the appropriate point.
Exponential impact.
Thank
yeah.
you. Yep,
Yeah.
agreed.
And this year, we have 22 Millis students choicing out to other districts. So it's a net gain for us. And just, we spoke a little bit about the difference between teaching now and teaching, 20, 30 years ago. Just demographics in our school, populations have changed. And I have on this slide our demographics from 10 years ago, 2013, 2014, and our demographics from our current year. And I think you can see from the data there, our student body has become more diverse in the last 10 years. And the quote-unquote Hispanic population is our fastest growing population. And I put Hispanic in quotes because most of the kids who fall under that category are Brazilian, and they actually speak Portuguese, but the state categorizes them as Hispanic. But that's our fastest growing group. With these changing classrooms comes, changes in services that we are required to provide. So, for example, we have a lot of English learner students, and I'll talk about them in a minute, but for these families and this population, we are required to have translators, translate documents, have meetings in with translators present, so that's added some cost to some of the things we do in schools now. And the next slide kind of shows some of the populations that have changed in our schools in the last 10 years. And, you know, again, I think the one that jumps off the page is I'm sorry, my slides aren't lined up, is the English learners. These are kids who come to us with ranging from no experience in the English language to limited experience in the English language. And so this population of students is growing in our schools, and it's across all grade levels. And you know, again, these students require services and programs to help them access their education. And so you can see that, again, in the last 10 years, the level of need within the classroom has changed, and the requirements that, you know, the teacher and support staff, you know, the services that they have to provide are more intense than they would have been 10 years ago.
I have a couple questions. With that, what is mandated by the state versus what's provided by Millis in terms of what those language needs are?
It's essentially all on us.
Okay.
We have.
So if Millis hits a certain percentage, the state says you have to provide X, Y, Z or anything like that. They don't, there's no mandate like that.
Well, no, the mandate is if, you know, every kid that comes in,
Yeah.
you have to meet the needs of that kid.
Yeah.
So, you know, a kid can come in speaking a language that no one in the district knows, and you know, we have to help that student learn English. We have to translate documents in that language. When there's a parent meeting, we have to have a translator there who can communicate to that family. So it's, you know, we have been awarded some grants that helps out in this area, but for the large portion is, it's on our school budget.
Okay. And I noticed students with disabilities increased quite a bit as well. Is there anything specific around that?
I would say part of it has to do with, I hate keep going back to the pandemic.
Yeah.
But we've seen the level of need and the number of students experiencing needs has increased.
Yeah.
You know, we had kids before the pandemic who, you know, were receiving services, and some of those students, the level of services they required grew exponentially. Not all, but
Yep.
some.
Yep.
And then there were some students who, before the pandemic, seemed to be accessing the curriculum, you know, with no major issues. And after the pandemic, you know, some of those students did need services.
And just last, could you define high needs for us?
Yeah, so high needs is a combination of basically the categories above it. Someone who's an English learner would be considered high needs. Someone who's low income would be considered high needs. And so a student with disability would be considered high needs. And then there are some kids who fit all three categories. There are some kids who fit 2 out of the 3 categories. So all
So
those.
it's everything there.
It's everything there, but the percentages don't add up because I might be an English language learner and also
Okay.
a student with disabilities.
Okay, I'm with you.
So,
Okay,
but,
thank you.
so, you know, so you can see the level of need is significant, 1 out of every 3 kids.
Pete, you got a question?
Yes, please. Thank you. I noticed that in 2020, in the top half of the slide, that the free lunch is gone, and I understand that all our kids are getting free lunch
Right.
essentially. If and when that changes and reverts back to, you know, not everybody gets free lunch, does that impact your budget? Do your costs go up, or are students literally, when they pay for their own lunch, they're paying the entire cost of the lunch?
It's subsidized, the student lunches are subsidized. The free and reduced lunch really doesn't impact the bottom line, because essentially, we're reimbursed for those.
I just want to make
lunches.
sure I'm clear that
Yeah.
when free lunch goes away, and you're no longer subsidized, does that have to get added to your budget? It's a lot like, I don't know, the community impact funding for, host community impact for marijuana sales. When that goes away, those services now have to be funded out of a town budget. When
Yeah.
school lunches are no longer subsidized by the state or the federal government, is that going to impact your budget?
No, it would be the individual students buying the lunch, those families would defer the cost. What I meant by everyone's deferred, even when even when students had to pay for their lunches, the part of the cost of that lunch was covered by funds. And I assume that would continue.
And will paid lunches ever come back, do you think? Or is there discussion?
They could.
Yeah.
There's still discussion.
Yeah.
But, I think in this
I know.
upcoming year's budget, I think it's included in there.
Thank you.
Okay, and here's the Tri-County slide. The number of students attending Tri-County this year is 32, down from 37 last year. And it was at a high of 67 back in 1920. So we have seen the numbers of students choosing to go to Tri-County declining. I would say that next year I would anticipate that to go up a little bit. We're graduating, there are only three 12th graders from Millis at Tri-County this year. I imagine we'll be sending more than 3 9th graders to Tri-County next year. The Aggie has remained pretty stagnant, 8 or 9 kids per year. And just as a point of information, the town pays tuition for those students who attend Tri-County, who attend the Aggie. The Tri-County tuition is about $19,000, a little over $19,000.
Lisa in the back, did you have a question on this slide? You good? No, I'm good, thank you. Okay. Does anyone I have a question on this slide. Does anyone else have a question? So one of the meeting materials that came out was from Tri-County. I don't know if you saw that. This might be a question for Carol or Mike, actually. So is this number of assessments of 16 million, but in the back, it shows what the cost would be for Millis. So do we know if that number will be changing? Yeah, based on enrollment, but this is for next year, I believe.
But that enrollment is based on this year?
So generally what they do is they invoice.
Just gotta speak into the mic. That's
They
okay.
invoice us based on, like, the prior year's enrollment.
Yeah.
So it's always lags a year.
Understood. Go ahead, Carol.
So the amount that you have in front of you, that 651,
Yes.
is currently what's in the operating budget for FY '25. I had gotten that number from the business manager at Tri-County back in February, but it wasn't confirmed and able to be published until recently.
Gotcha, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good, thank you.
Okay, and the next slide. The next slide just indicates students who attend private schools, and that could be everything from, private kindergartens to Montessori schools to parochial schools, all the way on up through the years to schools like Ursuline, Xaverian, Thayer, you know, and so we've seen an uptick in students attending private school. We have 9 more this year than we did last year. Homeschooled students are down slightly, and charter school students. We usually don't have a lot of students from Millis going to charter schools. We have currently, those numbers, there's about 20 students Clyde Brown age in private schools, 19 students in Millis Middle School in private schools, and 39 Millis residents of high school age in private schools. And those ratios are pretty accurate, I mean, pretty standard across towns, because there were just more options at the high school level for private schools.
Okay.
And then per pupil expenditures, this is data from fiscal year '22. And it's the you know, we talked about it a little earlier tonight, it's the cost of educating a single student by taking our costs and dividing it by the number of students. I do have, and I can leave this with you, they just released preliminary FY '23 per pupil expenditure numbers. And in FY '23, since enrollment boosted up, our relative position on this graph would move somewhat to the left. But for FY '22, Millis was $4 above the state average for per pupil expenditure. And then, you know, that chart shows some of our neighboring communities.
So for reference, just because Bob Abbott, he can leave it, for '23, we dropped our per pupil, the districts went up about $100 to $19,679, but the state average went up to $20,509. So in fiscal '23, we dropped to about $900 below the state average.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Pete.
do these costs include out-of-district tuition?
This first chart does not. I have another slide that includes out-of-district. So this information just came out, so it's kind of in its raw form. But again, it kind of indicates when our enrollment increases, our relative, our position in per pupil expenditures relative to our neighbors tends to decrease.
You can have mine. It's no big deal.
Okay.
And then this, to Mr. Barraby's point, this slide talks about out-of-district expenditures, which includes those tuitions from out-of-district. And again, Millis slightly above the state average in FY '22, slightly below the state average in FY '23. You know, I don't know if people have questions on this information.
I don't have anything specific, but, so if state goes up and we go down, is there a positive, negative, or is it just a data point?
It's just a data point.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
So, of the communities that are less per cost per student, which would be more akin to us? And of the ones that are higher, which would be more akin to us?
Probably the one that's closest to us, that's also included in among our DOT schools. And DOT schools, I have a couple slides on that in a minute, but it's a district analysis and review tool, and it kind of groups schools and districts by grade span and populations, like we just saw in the demographics. It kind of grouped them together. So in this list, the closest to us would be Medway.
And what do you think the differential, the reason for the differential is?
A lot of it is, the enrollment numbers.
More kids?
More kids tends to lower the per pupil.
How about King Philip?
I don't know if it's on my head.
Okay.
And then, in looking at this, there's also, the per pupil expenditure doesn't just include, what your funding is from the town. It also includes money you spend that comes from grants and revolving accounts like the choice funds and things like that. So in looking at, and this is a kind of a way to put some of these expenses into context, in looking at overall budgets among our neighbor districts, Millis's overall expenditures have the highest percentage of those costs being paid for by grants and revolving accounts. In FY '22, 14.2% of our expenses were covered by grants and revolving funds. And when you back that out and look at what the operational budget per pupil expenditure is, it kind of shifts things as to where Millis sits in relation to its neighbors when it comes to per pupil expenditures that cost that the town taxpayers pick up. And when you look at the data from that perspective, you see Millis is more in the middle of the road than it is when you just look at total per pupil expenditure cost.
All good? Any questions? All good? Thank you.
Okay. And then these are our DOT schools. These are the schools that are most similar to us in enrollment, special populations, et cetera. One thing that really isn't factored into the DOT calculation is the physical location of the school. So, a number of these schools on this particular chart, our DOT schools, are schools that are out in the western part of the state, where the demographics in terms of, cost of living, et cetera, are different. So you can see in these areas, Millis is, our per pupil expenditures are on the high side compared to DOT districts. Again, I think the FY '23 with our increased enrollment has kind of pushed us to the left a little bit. But, these are the districts the state kind of uses as a comparison for Millis.
And the big part, as Bob alluded to, the geographical element, it's the first slide that we're competing with for staff.
Yeah.
We're not competing for staff with people who are in Littleton inside and Old Rochester and Mount Greylock. I've done the trip to Mount Greylock.
Unless you play volleyball.
Right.
Right.
Or run cross-country,
Okay.
exactly.
Fair enough.
And we see a similar pattern on the next slide with, when you include out-of-district tuitions, et cetera.
Okay.
And again, looking at the DOT schools with percentage of budget coming from revolving, again, you see Millis is near the top. We're not at the top. Town of Harvard has 26.3% of its budget paid for out of grants or revolving funds. And the reason for that really large number is because members of the military who are housed at Fort Devens send their kids to the Harvard schools, and the Harvard schools get over $21,000 for each in tuition from I don't know if it's the Department of Defense or the United States government, but, so they get over $2 million a year for in those tuitions, so they're able to use that to supplement their town budget. But again, you can see that, you know, our DOT schools are similar to us in that they tend to use more or have higher rates of revolving funds and grants used to supplement their budgets.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I just, the money that was approved at town meeting last fall, is that considered a revolving fund?
For the operational budget?
Right.
No, the
Okay,
revolving
okay.
funds are like choice, the money we
Okay,
have
I
in
got you.
choice and things like that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I think we can go to the next slide. So
Yep.
now we can get down to the FY '25 budget.
All right.
We're looking at what we're proposed at the budget hearing, salaries amounting to $17,229,731. Out-of-district tuition expenses at $1,855,806, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides. Other expenses totaling $2,080,253 for a total of $21,165,657 as a level service budget, which was the budget we proposed at the hearing. Okay, if we can go to the next slide.
Deirdre, if you could go to the next slide.
Frozen. This might be frozen.
Might be frozen. We have it in front of us, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
We'll check in with her in a second.
so to break out the salary for FY '25,
Yep.
we had $16,419,517 was our salaries last year. We had several new mandated positions that we added during the year, which, you know, mandated meaning we had to do it. There was an RBT position, which is a registered behavior technician, which is sometimes if students have that service on their IEP, they require a paraprofessional with specialized training in behavior. And so there was, we had to add one of those positions when it appeared on a student's IEP. We had a part-time paraprofessional who went to full-time when a preschool student moved to kindergarten and went full day. So, you know, preschool is part of the day, kindergarten full day, so we had to increase that position. And then there were some mandated summer positions for students whose services extend beyond the school year into the summer. So we had to add those salaries, and that's in the amount of $148,352. We had some positions that were covered by the host community agreement last year that we moved into the operating budget. That was a middle school SEL teacher, that's a social emotional learning teacher, for a program, a sub-separate program that we have in the middle school for students with specific needs. And having that program in the middle school actually saves us money, because if we didn't have that program, we'd be sending those kids out of district at a cost of, at minimum, $60,000 per student, and probably more than that. And contractual increases of $545,314 for a 3.5% increase due to contractual obligations. Lanes are in the teacher's contract. When you attain certain levels of education, you move a lane on the contract. So you can have a master's degree, then if you get 15 more credits, you move to the lane of master's plus 15, master's 30, and so on. So we had increase of $39,118 in lanes, so that was a total increase in salaries for FY '25 of $810,214, a 4.93% increase in salaries over FY '24.
And just to clarify, the contractual increases are union contracts essentially?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, union and some non-union for administration.
Individual
Okay.
contracts, yeah.
Okay.
Basically, the total contractual increases, things we control, is 3.5% over last year.
Another question?
Go ahead, Mike.
So this current contract with the teachers, when does that expire?
It expires at the end of this next year.
The end of FY '25?
Correct.
So you'll start negotiating,
Next
fall.
next year.
no, next year or this coming fall?
Next school year.
Yeah, next
Yeah.
school, yes.
Yeah.
Fiscal year, calendar year, fiscal year.
Go ahead, Pete.
Thank you. This is probably a stupid question. I feel like I should know this. Why are the positions being moved out of HCA now?
The amount we received in HCA for the FY '24, the amount we're receiving in FY '25 is less than what we received last year. So this year, we have about $80,000 worth of one salary in the host community agreement. Last year, we had that salary plus the middle school SEL teacher plus two SEL paras, one in the middle school, one in the high school.
Did you request the additional funds from HCA?
In talking with with Mike, the town administrator, the amount of money in the host community agreement was less than it was the year before. That's my understanding. And I'm glad Mike's here. too.
Hello, Mike. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet.
As the superintendent has said, the amounts we're receiving are definitely declining. That's a change in market forces across the Commonwealth. In addition, we are fully aware that those HCA funds will be coming to an end fairly soon.
Yep.
And we're trying to do it in a measured approach, so it isn't a cliff. We're
Yep.
trying to basically ease off of those or have the town wean off of those funds. So as part of our discussions with the schools, we are reducing the use of those funds gradually over several years. So that's we've done some of that on the municipal side.
Yep.
And we've asked the school to do the same.
Mr. Chair?
Sounds good. Go ahead, Pete.
Just if I may, as a follow-up, I understand what you're saying. But is that also to say that the funds are coming down, but are the other services being provided are they of more importance than this? In other words, you can prioritize the requirements, potentially, you could prioritize the requirements and potentially fund this from HCA. And that kicks the can, I understand that, HCA is going away, so might be moot.
I appreciate the question. I think that's a policy question. And I think if you asked 5 different people about the priorities, you'd probably get 5 different answers. So I think it's a legitimate question, but it's not something that I can easily answer in this format here
Okay.
tonight.
Yeah. Go ahead, Craig.
Hearing the word policy decision, Mike's really good about the administrative decisions, but on a policy standpoint, with HCA dollars coming down, not a question of prioritization, with it coming down, we implemented cuts on both the municipal and the school side, and we thought that was equitable. We thought there were needs on the town side that we weren't willing to prioritize over needs on the school side. We didn't take all the cuts on the school. We spread them in an appropriate way, we thought. So that's how we arrived at it from a policy standpoint. If all the money was there that was there in FY '24, we wouldn't have made any cuts.
Totally unrelated, but can you just brief on what other municipal cuts from the HCA are at some point in the evening, all right, Mr. Chair?
We can talk about that
Thank you.
later, because
Thank you.
we're talking about the school right now. Go ahead. Oh, wait, go ahead, Mike.
So I would like to have asked, what the breakdown is of salaries between teachers, administration, and so forth. I know you provided us with some documentation today. It came in very late, and I was actually disappointed that we didn't get that documentation earlier, knowing that this meeting was scheduled some time ago. But I would just say that, one second. I would just say that we probably will have some more questions going forward once we have a little time to digest that information. It was a lot of information.
So the new information that just was communicated to staff was added to the presentation and sent out today for them. Our presentation, what Bob's going through right now, has been available
No, I know that.
for 2 weeks.
No, I know
And it's
that.
been online.
I'm talking about the other 75 pages of breakdown of salaries and
We'll
expenses.
get to
and all
the
that.
details of that in a second, so.
All of it's been
yeah.
available since we did our public hearing.
But we didn't get
We
it.
didn't get it.
We didn't get it sent to us.
It was,
Is it up to us to go to the school, Mr. Chair? I'm not.
Yeah,
go to the
understood,
school.
understood. So if we go back in time, we knew that the school committee was going to have a meeting. And I asked Deirdre to put together a meeting request in case everyone showed up, and no one showed up. So I think it's 50-50. It's out there.
But
out there.
we talk about it here, Mr. Chair. We don't talk about it at the school committee. It's
We
here.
do.
Yeah, okay, understood. Continue.
And just looking at expenditures, FY '24, the expenditures were $3,815,206, and FY '25 expenditures, 3.16% increase to $3,936,059. And the next slide kind of breaks it down. In those expenses, almost 76% of those expenses come from these drivers. Out-of-district tuitions, which I mentioned earlier, hit the operating budget at $1,855,806. And just a note on that, the actual cost of tuitions for next year is $2,555,806. That'll be offset by $700,000 from circuit breaker. And in a later slide, I kind of explained circuit breaker. So the cost in the operational budget goes down to 1.85 million because of our use of circuit breaker. Contracted and consulting services, that's a big driver of our budget. I mentioned before at $432,247. This is, we contract out for special ed services if a student needs extra speech and language, OT, PT, those types of things. But we're also seeing increases because of our growing EL population. I talked about the translation services and services to help English learners. So that is a big part of the expenditures. Energy, as we all know, at $375,304. It's a big driver of our expenses. The new school bus leases, $163,320. And then technology, as we all know, very important and vital to 21st century education, is a driver of our expenditures at $162,324. So the total, these amount to almost 76% of our expense budget.
Go ahead, Pete.
Mr. Mullany, are your facility maintenance costs included in this slide? Contracted?
Yes,
contracted services?
that would be
Which-
included in contracted services
Which
as well.
line?
Second from the top.
The second from the top.
Just contracted, so your building services, maintenance for.
Right, if
White
we have
Brown.
someone come in, right.
Thank you.
Yep.
My recommendation is that gets pointed out. That is critical going forward for any type of budget and school investment, that needs to be called out, is my recommendation to you, because we've all been criticized for not maintaining buildings in the town, the school. That needs to be clear, have more clarity on it.
Thank you. And there's still some variables as we continue with the budget process. We still don't know the final state budget allocations, as you know. We probably won't find out till June, July. Our choice receipts, there may be some fluctuation in those. If a kid lives in Millis but moves to another town and stays in the schools, we get a prorated portion of choice. And likewise, if a choice kid moves into Millis, we lose those prorated choice dollars. So that's a slight fluctuations there. The grant availability and allocations in FY '25, we're not sure of yet. I'll talk about grants in a minute. And then, of course, the fluctuation of fuel costs and utilities and things like that. Okay, and the next slide is about grants, I believe. So we receive grants from the federal and state government to help us educate students. Some grants can help us with salaries and things like that. Other grants are targeted towards different areas and have restrictions on what we can use the grants for. So these grants on this slide are quote-unquote entitlement grants. We get them every year. We don't have to apply for them, or we normally get them every year. Every now and then they might pull one out. The big one is the IDEA Federal Special Education Grant. So that's a grant that helps us fund some of our special education programs. Generally speaking, we don't know what that's going to look like next year. We will be getting an IDEA grant. Sometimes we get a little more, sometimes we get a little less. We at this point, we really don't know, but we will be getting something. So, that's, in FY '23, we got about $350,000 from IDEA. We got about $25,000 more this year, but I would not count on us getting $25,000 more next year. If we could get $25,000 less. The IDEA Early Childhood Grant we use that to cover some of our paraprofessional positions. Title I Part A and Title II Part A help us with some of the support services and can also pay for a portion of a teacher's salary. And then the Title IV Part A helps us with a paraprofessional salary. Doesn't pay the whole salary, but helps us with a salary there, and then also helps us with some supplies. And then in the next slide, we have grants that are not entitlement grants, grants that we apply for and receive. So the Student Opportunity Act Evidence-Based Practices Grant was a grant that it's a 3-year grant, and in FY '23, we got $150,000. We didn't use all of the $150,000, so we were able to carry over $37,000. So this year, in the Evidence-Based Practices Grant, we had $187,000. And that the evidence-based practice that this grant supported was co-teaching and inclusion. So we were able to use that money to help our staff be educated and practice more inclusion and co-teaching practices. This grant actually helped pay for a special education teacher and 0.6 of an English language learner teacher. High-quality instructional materials grant. This grant ends this year. We received $58,000 from the state to help us as we implemented our literacy program in K-5 at Clyde Brown. The Summer Acceleration Academy Grant and the Math Acceleration Academy Grants. These were grants we received from the state to help us address some of the learning deficits over the last few years. So the Summer Academy was obviously, kind of a summer school for students in the elementary grades to help get them ready to hit the ground running when we started at the end of August. And the Math Acceleration Academy Grant, we're going to be using that this April for identified students in grades 3 through 5 in math to work on math over April vacation. And so those grants may be available next year. We don't know. But those grants, they supplement what we do. They don't supplant anything. They're additions, enhancements. And then the Investigating History Grant is a grant that provides professional development for social studies teachers in grade 5, 6, 7, 8. So those grants, excuse me, those grants we don't necessarily get every year. We're anticipating about $150,000 in the Student Opportunity Act grant. We're hopeful that can help with our budget.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Excuse me, these grants, do you have somebody, who applies for these grants? And do you have a dedicated person who could apply for more additional grants each year so that perhaps, like the police department does, they do, I'm familiar with that because they
Right.
do a lot of, I'm not saying you're not doing it, but that they, apply. I didn't know if there was somebody who.
Yeah, it's not, we don't have one dedicated person for the special education grants. Our Director of Student Support Services, Neely Urquhart, handles those. And for other educational grants, Maureen Knowlton, who's our Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, does that. And they both do a great job in kind of finding these things. One of the problems with some grants is because of our demographics, we don't qualify. Some of these competitive grants, they don't come to Millis. If thinking back to a few slides ago, I would say we're pretty good at finding grants to utilize, when you look at the percentage of our budget that comes from grants in comparison to some of our neighbors. So we're out there looking and digging. It would be nice to have a grant writer, but at this point, we don't think we'd get a return on that investment.
That's good to know. Are these grants available each year, or each year it could possibly be a different grant?
Yeah, very good
Okay.
point.
Okay.
It seems like you never know what's going to come. And sometimes with the state, it comes very quickly, and you have to have your information in 2 weeks. And so it does change year to year.
Thank you.
And then circuit breaker. So this is circuit breaker for the upcoming year, for FY '25. We'll have $763,064 in circuit breaker to help offset some special education tuitions. That's the money that we backed out of the tuition cost to take it from 2.5 million down to 1.8 million. And circuit breakers, kind of an obtuse concept. So I went to the state website, and they have an FAQ on circuit breaker. And so one question is, how are reimbursements calculated through circuit breaker? Reimbursement is calculated on a per-student basis when the total cost of services exceeds the annual circuit breaker eligibility threshold. Subject to annual legislative appropriation, the state pays 75% of the costs above the threshold through reimbursement to districts. So they give you an example. In FY '23, the threshold was $49,494. If a special education service provided to a student cost the district $75,000, reimbursement for that student would be the cost of the $75,000 minus the threshold of $494 times .75, or $19,129.50. So I did out the math. So if the next slide kind of shows you how it works. So if we just apply this, say this is FY '24, we have a kid that's in an out-of-district placement, it costs us $75,000. We pay the $75,000, we pay the tuition. At the end of the year, the state backs out the threshold amount. Anything over $49,494 is eligible for reimbursement at 75%. So we back that out. That leaves us with $25,506, which is eligible for circuit breaker. So we take that $25,000, multiply it by .75, and get to $19,129.50. That's the amount we'll get from the state next year. So when all is said and done, for that $75,000 tuition, Millis is paying $55,870.50, and we get reimbursed $19,129.50. So we're not going to turn the money away, but it's certainly not a dollar for dollar from the state.
Hang on. Pete, go ahead.
Thanks. Is circuit breaker required to be used on special education?
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Does it only cover out-of-district costs?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
So nothing for in-house?
No, no. It's when the cost goes above the threshold.
So you'd have to justify like the cost, so you'd almost have to attach a very high-priced staff member to one student solely in order to get above that $50,000, and then they'd pay 75% of that.
So it's per student, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, right. And that, that wouldn't be something that we would do in district, not cost effective. And then the allocations of the budget, just, staying with, the bulk of our budget is salaries. So 82% of the FY '25 budget is salaries, and the rest is taken up by expenditures. And the bottom pie chart there shows the expenditures. The largest expenditure is the special education because of the $1.8 million in special education tuitions. The other large costs are technology and energy and utilities. If you took the tuitions, and separated it from special education and had that be a separate category, then 4.2% of the expenses would be, special education supplies and things like that. So the bulk of the special education expenses are the tuitions.
And just to confirm, when we're looking at the pie charts and the percentages, the salaries of 82 and the 17% or so difference, that's the bottom pie chart, correct?
Right, yeah,
Okay.
that slice is.
Based on 100%, it gets divided up then?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then if we look at the budget comparison, between last year, in FY '24, we had a base budget of $19,296,026. Our salaries were $16,419,517. Our out-of-district tuitions were $801,861. Other expenses, $2,013,345. So the total that we requested last year. And in the column, it says level services. That wasn't a level services budget. We had to make cuts, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the difference between the base budget and, what we proposed was $938,697. That shortfall was covered at town meeting by the $538,000 in free cash and $400,000 in stabilization fund that was voted at town meeting that, kept us floating last year. This year's budget, the amount from the town, $20,095,000, oh, can we stay on that slide, please, Deirdre? Thank you. $20,095,023. Of that, $17.229 million in salaries, $1.85 million in out-of-district tuitions, $2,080,253 in other expenses. So a total level services budget for this year would be $21,165,657. And the difference between the base and the level service budget is $1,070,767. And so that would be the shortfall this year between the operating and the level service. And then the next slide.
Sorry, hang on, just a quick question on the OOD. So last year, was it out-of-district tuition that was 14% increase?
Correct.
And this year, it's a 2.99% increase.
Well, it's a little, the difference there is there's $200,000 more in circuit breaker taking it out.
Yeah.
And so last year's 14% increase in special education tuitions that's set by the Operational Services Division.
Yeah.
This year, the increase was 4.69%. So over 2 years, an 18.69% increase.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying. Go ahead, Pete.
Can I further clarify on that, also the change last year for 14%, that was just straight the rate. It had nothing to do with the actual requirement, how many children needed services. So that was, this year, the increase is not necessarily because of that. You could have a net decrease or increase of additional services, and I don't know what that is, but it doesn't much matter right now.
Yeah, last year, the 24 was the 14%, but yeah, we also had an increase in services required with a couple of kids, more kids, a couple of new kids going out of district last year, as well as enhanced services. This year, we're a little more flat in students, so the increase is more rate-based. And then, again, circuit breaker is a lag, so we did see, a $200,000 increase in circuit breaker, which helps. But again, $200,000 increase in circuit breaker on, a $900,000 mandated expense
Yep.
is not really the state coming through. It's carrying, their 20% effort, and the towns get 80%.
Go ahead, Jody.
So, I'm looking at the budgets that were sent to us, which is more detailed than, obviously, this is high level. So I have a couple of questions on that. You separate out ed reform in the salaries. What is that?
Yeah, so ed reform is a mechanism by which we have funds available if a teacher goes out on leave, if there are, contractual obligations that come up during the year. Most of it is for when a teacher, say, goes out on maternity leave and we have to hire a long-term sub, things like that. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
There'll also be years like next year. So when you're looking at that number of fiscal '26 budget, that number will be higher than what it is now because
It's pretty low for
Yeah.
FY '25.
it'll be higher because we always have to have a number for, while we're in negotiations. So we have to be negotiating in good faith. So until we have contracts set, there's got to be some placeholder of funds available we can't negotiate without. So that's also, again, that number year to year will fluctuate. Next year it'll be higher because we'll be in the midst of negotiations with the teachers, and it won't be finalized.
And
Please.
then, in line with that, so the line item for substitutes increased substantially from FY '24 to '25. Can you speak to why that is?
Yeah, a number of things. We've had a number of long-term leaves, medical-related, where we've had teachers who have been absent for extended periods of time, and we've needed subs to cover that. There's also been instances where we've had a couple of paraprofessional positions that were unfilled at a time, and we needed someone to, not necessarily provide the service to the student, but come in and sub so a teacher could provide a service to a student. So yeah, sub lines definitely were up this year.
Keep going.
All
Yep.
right, but on the custodial maintenance salaries, that went down by a chunk.
Yeah, because we share.
Was that due to cost sharing, or was?
That,
I
I
don't usually see
don't
things go
know.
down.
Yeah, I don't know at the top of my head
Okay.
on that one. We did reduce in FY '20, we reduced a .5 custodian,
Okay,
so,
well, that would make sense.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're referring to the budget that was on this other item that was sent out.
Sure.
Yep. Go ahead, Mike.
Salary
Oh, sorry,
questions.
go ahead.
No, those
You
were
got one
the
more?
salary questions.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
When a teacher goes out on disability or medical leave, what percentage of their salary do they receive?
They receive all of it. If they have sick days to cover it,
If they have sick days, right, but
Right.
if they get like a long-term disability leave or anything?
they can apply for sick bank within the collective bargaining agreements. The teachers have a sick bank. So if they exhaust all their sick days and personal days, a committee consisting of myself and one other representative of the school committee and someone from the Teachers Association make a determination if that teacher is eligible for sick bank.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Pete. Go ahead, Pete.
On your memo, Mr. Mulaney, there's a athletic stipends line that's getting reduced by roughly $40,000, maybe a little less. Does that represent a cut in a sport or a cut in a coach or?
No, that's kind of moving stipends to come out of user fees. So a lot of our coaches' salaries come out of user fees. And so we took more out of the operating budget to come out of user fees, another revolving account we have.
Do user fees go up because of that or no?
We'll be looking at user fees, I think, at the next school committee meeting.
Last year for the first time in 15 years, we raised them, we raised the athletic fees, I think, 3%. It's possible that they'll go up another 3% just to kind of keep pace.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Are sick days and personal days rolled over year to year so that they can be cumulative, or
They
are
can accumulate sick days. The teaching staff get 2 personal days every year. They can carry over 2 personal days. They can have no more than 4 personal days in a given year, but sick days accrue.
How many sick days are they given per year?
15.
So if somebody's never used them and they've been with you for 10 years?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
So this $1,070,767 shortfall, to make up that shortfall, we'd have to, we would have to cut staff. I mentioned that the FY '24 budget wasn't a level service budget. Can you go back, Deidre, to that other slide? The one, yeah, just to, so last year, we had to cut $729,357 before we got the $938,000. So we had cuts last year, and to add $1 million worth of cuts on top of that would impact all our schools, back to your point, John, about class sizes and things. And I'll talk about that in more detail in the upcoming slides. But cutting $1,070,767 out of the FY '25 would have a devastating impact across all operations in the district. So, yeah, we can move on to look at the impacts. So we can go to the next slide, yeah. So last year, these were the cuts we had last year. We cut the Clyde Brown Elementary teacher. We saw the impact of that in the grade 4 class size being very high. We cut Clyde Brown pre-K teacher, reduced, we cut pre-K from 4 classes to 3 classes. We cut pre-K para. We cut a middle school reading interventionist last year, and we cut a high school 21st century learning coordinator. And this was a position that helps students with internships and job shadowing and things like this, which is, again, impacts students. And then we had reductions. We reduced our technical support by a 0.5 FTE, so a full-time position went to half-time. We cut a custodial position, full-time to half-time. Same thing with library aid. We eliminated the Spanish immersion unified arts elective in the middle school, and we reduced art in the high school from a 1.0 to a 0.6. So these are cuts we've already done, and we had to live with them this year. To make up the $1,070,767 shortfall, we'd be looking at the following cuts. And I'll just go through by school. And then I have the impact on each school on separate slides. So, feel free to ask questions whenever. They might be answered in a upcoming slide, but feel free to jump in with any questions.
Why don't you walk us through all the schools together, and then we can ask the questions at the end.
Okay. So at Clyde Brown, we'd be looking at cutting 2 kindergarten paras, 1 reading specialist, 1 technology teacher, 1 Spanish assistant, 1 reading tutor, 1 math tutor, and we'd be reducing a 1.0 art teacher to a 0.8. So we'd be losing 0.2 of an art teacher. Millis Middle School, we'd be looking at cutting 2 English language arts teachers, 1 math teacher, 1 math interventionist, a unified art TV production teacher, 0.4, and 0.2 of a physical education teacher. At Millis High School, we'd be looking at cutting 1 English teacher, 1 bridge counselor. Now, just to explain what the bridge program is, a program we started about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's just as its name implied. It's a bridge for our kids who, for whatever reason, haven't been able to attend school, to bridge them back to full involvement in school. So it's not a special education program, but it's an additional service we have for all our students. So what kind of student is in Bridge? It's very varied. We have kids who get concussions and are unable to spend the whole day in school, have to stay out some days. They might re-enter through the Bridge program. We have students who have medical conditions where they can't be in school. When they finally are able to return to school, they start with a reduced load and then move into full access to the curriculum. They spend time in the Bridge room. And we have students with mental health issues that require that they maybe can't be in school all day. This program helps acclimate them to school with the goal of getting them into school. So we'd lose the Bridge counselor. The TV production program would be eliminated. A Spanish teacher would move from 1.0 position to a 0.2 position. And 0.2 of a VHS teacher. We have a number of students who take online courses, and the VHS teacher is a teacher who teaches an online class that students from around the country can take as part of our agreement to allow our students to take online classes. And I think I skipped the 1.0 phys ed teacher at the high school.
And just to clarify, VHS is virtual?
Virtual high school, I'm sorry.
Thank you, that's
One
right.
of
I just
those
wanna make sure.
acronyms.
A lot of
Yeah.
people are from the 80s here, including
Yeah,
myself, so.
yeah, we have a lot of.
Bring back the 8 tracks.
Either that or beta. So I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
One thing on the FTE count, so the TV production, the fraction in the high school and the fraction in the middle school, that adds to one, that person currently splits time between the two.
Mhm.
So that's one person.
So it's one person, which will, as Bob's later slide, eliminate the entire program, which is significant.
Yes. Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, curious how did you decide who to cut, right? 2 English teachers in middle school, how many are left if you've taken out 2?
Right, yeah, so.
It's not that big of a program.
It was not easy coming up with this list, just like it wasn't easy coming up with the list that we had to come up with last year, and it wasn't easy losing that staff last year. It's very difficult, and we're not cutting fat here. This is cutting to the bone. And
I guess,
I'll
are there
kind of
any ELA
explain,
teachers left
yeah,
after that?
I'll kind of explain the middle school situation when we get to that slide.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
More slides.
Go ahead, Mike.
So I don't see any administrative staff on this. Were there any thoughts to cutting admin staff?
We only have 3 schools, so we have 3 principals. We have 1 part-time principal in the elementary school, a school with 602 students in it, and we have a part-time assistant principal that splits time between the middle and the high school and also teaches health. So we don't have, we can't have a school without a principal.
Are those the only administrative staff the entire school system has?
Well, myself and the director of curriculum and instruction and the technology director, the director of student support services works with special ed, and those are positions that we can't not have.
And what percentage of the total salary budget for the schools is admin?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. I could get you that number.
It's in the
Yeah, it's in the budget
booklet
book,
that we
yeah.
got today, but I didn't have
yeah,
time to burn
yeah,
through that
yeah.
today. Thank you. I'd appreciate that. I asked that last year, too. I did. But I didn't get it last year.
All right.
I got it here. We'll make sure we follow up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Perfect. Keep going. Thank you.
Okay, so the implications of these cuts. At Clyde Brown, reducing the 2 Clyde Brown paras. Right now, we have 1 para in each of our kindergarten classes. So reducing that by 2.0 would probably mean a half-time person in each kindergarten class instead of a full-time person. And that's going to have a negative impact on, the foundational learning that happens in kindergarten. You may recall from an earlier slide, the class sizes in kindergarten are very large, and to do those classes, a classroom full of kindergarten students with a half-time aide would seriously impact the foundational learning of those kids. Reducing a reading specialist would reduce exposure to direct instruction in reading. Reading's the most essential skill that these kids learn in elementary school. The first part of elementary school is learning how to read. The second part is reading to learn. If kids don't learn to read, they won't be able to read to learn, and that will impact their education for the rest of their lives. Also, with the reading interventionist, without that position, struggling readers are going to receive less support in pull-out services and pull-in services, and the gaps between students who are at grade level and those students who are at below grade level, those gaps will widen. The kids who need the extra support won't get the extra support. Reducing the math tutor position, again, would cause struggling learners to fall further behind in math. And the kids below grade level would just not be able to get the supports needed to get them to grade level. The technology teacher, eliminating that position would eliminate the direct instruction of technology to all the kids at Clyde Brown. So they go and they have 1 period a week where they get instruction in foundational skills like keyboarding, typing, using different tools for presentation and for information gathering, concepts. You'd be amazed at some of the things these kids are doing in that technology class at Clyde Brown. Coding, they're doing coding, using different technology tools to learn coding and learn those higher order skills that go with coding. They learn about how to be safe in a digital environment, and the different things that they need to be aware of if they're going to be out there in an online environment, which they will be. So we'd lose that, and we'd lose some technology skills in the core classrooms, because that teacher also works with the classroom teachers to integrate technology into their classrooms. The elimination of the Spanish assistant would reduce support immersion kids receive, and the bulk of that assistance work is in grades 1 and 2 when the kids are just starting out. And having another person who is a native speaker, who can really help the kids practice their Spanish and their listening skills as well as their speaking skills, would lose that. And reducing the art teacher would reduce kids' contact with that content. So, every cut here has a drastic effect.
Go ahead, Mike.
So you indicated on the kindergarten paras that it wouldn't actually be the elimination of the actual humans, but a breakdown of time.
Well, it would be, it could be, it probably would be taking 4 full-time and making them half-time.
Making them half-time.
Yeah.
What positions let's just stay with Clyde Brown, what positions in Clyde Brown are actually eliminated as opposed to somebody being cut on the FTE?
the reading specialist, reading tutor, math tutor. Yeah, with the exception of the art teacher and the kindergarten para positions.
They'll all be Xed out people. Okay. And how about middle school, if you don't mind? Well, we can go,
Yeah.
you can do that
Yeah.
one, that's fine.
Is there any other questions on Clyde?
Scroll back, Deirdre, can you scroll back up to the table? Thanks. So,
Mark, can you use the microphone? Nobody's hearing you.
Thank you.
so basically, with the exception of the kindergarten paras, possibly, the art teacher, the Spanish teacher, and the .2 PE for the middle school, every other one of those is a person.
So a full-time person eliminated.
Right. Because again, the TV production is one person.
Two schools.
Thanks, Deirdre.
Thanks. If we could go to the middle school slide. And this is to your question. By reducing the middle school, 2 English teachers and a math teacher, we'd be eliminating what we call doubles. And doubles in 6th grade and in 7th grade, students have double English, which means they have twice as much time in that subject than their other classes. And in 8th grade, they have a double in math. So this would eliminate those doubles. This all came about, the doubles came, we instituted the doubles about 10 or 12 years ago. Our middle school students were having difficulty with reading and math. MCAS scores reflected that, NAEP scores reflected that, other assessments reflected that, and the experience of our teachers reflected that the kids needed more direct instruction in those areas. So we instituted the doubles. So this would eliminate that. And, the scores that we've seen climb up over those last 10 years, so that now, just using the MCAS as an example, the middle school consistently is double digits above the state average when it comes to meeting or exceeding the standard. That would drop. There's no doubt in my mind. The elimination of the math interventionists would have a similar effect. And if we just carry over, what would be happening at Clyde Brown, that would bring itself right into the middle school. Again, particularly those kids with deficits, would not have the support to make up those deficits.
Just to ask about the doubles. So does that mean the teacher's classroom would then have twice as many kids? Or would it be a reduction of service to the students?
So the class size, in the individual class sizes, would be about the same, but the amount of time kids would have
Gotcha.
in English and math would be
Go ahead, Jen.
cut in half.
And then what would they do instead?
So that's a question here. So generally speaking, we'd probably have to change the middle school schedule so that we could absorb the doubles. We'd have to probably make the schedule more like the high school schedule, which isn't necessarily good for middle school kids. Middle school has a different philosophy. It's not a junior high. It's a middle school and a different philosophy, and the kids have different needs. But we'd probably have to sacrifice that with these cuts. And so we'd see kids who are below grade level having less opportunity to get to grade level.
Go ahead.
Just along those lines, cutting, like the reading specialists or the tutors or prevention was, do you foresee that if, by cutting these programs, the children that may fall behind or may have kind of a gap, do you think that that may cause more children to go on IEPs, SPED, and then that would then make the costs higher for special education, so maybe we'll be worse off if we're eliminating these positions that are preventing these students from being on an IEP?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption that that would happen, absolutely. And then, back to the question of, well, what do you do with the kids? Well, we also have the specials, the unified arts in the middle school, eliminating TV, cutting PE would reduce the offerings we have in unified arts. So the remaining unified arts class sizes would grow. And it could also result in us having study halls at the middle school. Again, a middle school is not like a high school. 6th and 7th and 8th graders in a study hall, not good for kids. Not good for kids. Yeah. I don't know if there's any questions on the middle school.
Okay, let's shift to high school.
Okay, and the high school, at the high school, eliminating the English teaching position would result in higher class sizes in the core English classes, so bigger class sizes there. It would probably result in the elimination of our AP English language course, which is a junior course. So fewer opportunities for our kids to take college-level courses, prepare for college and beyond. The elimination of the bridge program would impact a whole range of kids. Kids who utilize that program to get back into school. And for some of those kids in the program, that's the only way we could get them to school. So that service and that program would be eliminated. Elimination of the phys ed teacher would increase our PE class sizes and reduce PE electives. It would likely reduce the PE time for our students, which could, we'd really have to work on scheduling to avoid putting ourselves in the crosshairs of the state. The state has PE requirements that every student take PE every year. And this position was added a number of years ago when the state conducted a review of our district and our schools, and they told us, you need to hire another phys ed teacher. We'd have to be very creative to stay out of the doghouse from the state on this one. The elimination of our TV production, as Mark just mentioned, this is an award-winning program. We have kids all over the country working in the industry. We have kids out in LA, we have kids in New York, graduates in the field who trace their success back to this program. And this is a program we would be eliminating. The reduction of the Spanish section in the high school would mean larger class sizes in Spanish. And the reduction of the virtual high school, the VHS .2 position, could impact our kids' opportunities for online learning. And I'm not saying any of this to be dramatic. This is what will happen.
Yeah, and these are the cuts, they are identified, and, as we went through these, I said to Bob, when we first ran through it, I can literally trace every one of these things back over the last 10 to 15 years that I've been sitting on this committee as to why they were needed. The first conversation I had with Superintendent Gustafson, was the fact that our high school was out of compliance in PE. We had historically skirted by letting athletes not take gym because we couldn't get them the time, because we didn't have the staff. That was one of the things. We had kids leaving the district for a lack of opportunities, whether it be AP classes, just other electives, TV production had just started to take off. The virtual high school courses are that avenue for a small school district to be able to provide kids electives, whether it's APs or just other courses that we can't hire a teacher to teach, some random elective. But we get it through these this virtual high school program. We invested in the virtual high school program so we'd have those opportunities. Middle school test scores were awful. We ended up implementing the double reading and the double math by hiring getting an extra teacher. It took time. It took getting our contracts down to being under 4% a year so that we had surpluses, so we had the ability to do these, to address these needs. And if this override doesn't fail, we're literally taking this district back 15 years.
Go ahead, Mike.
So let's say that it passes and you haven't, without any cuts, and you'd be funded for this year. But next year, if we look at 4.93% increase, which you had this year, are you anticipating deficits potentially in the next year or the year after that or the year after that? Because this doesn't really solve that problem.
In general, over time, a 5% increase in requested budget has either, the town's revenue has either covered it, or it translates to 100,000, 150,000 of reductions that has always been managed. Again, the last override request was 2011, and our budget request has been in the 4 to 6% range, sometimes 7 on a not great year, every year of that time. And
So you feel that this solves, for the foreseeable future, any large deficits?
absent another catastrophic, 14%, 5 new kids needing to go out of district, controllable budget in a regular cycle, this override gets us back to being able to manage within the parameters of the town.
Yeah, and in my estimation, it's like a market correction for our base budget. If you included the $938,000 we had last year, and if that was our base budget, we wouldn't be looking at a $1.07 million shortfall. Like Mark said, it would be something we could manage. And I also think the fact that the town approved the Special Education Stabilization Fund moving forward, that gives us a cushion as well. So I think getting the base budget to a number that can sustain, 4% growth over years, I think it will solve the problem. And we.
Go ahead, Pete.
Well, obviously, I defer to you to who fields this question, but do we know how much is proposed to be funded into that Special Education Stabilization Fund in the proposed budget for the town?
Was it like $300,000 at that November town meeting?
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assuming that the school doesn't need to utilize any of it this year, the amount requested for next year would be 0, because we are at the legal maximum of what we can have in that account. It's 2%, I think, of the net school spending. So that is the maximum under the current law that we can place in that account. I think it was around 300, around 300,000. So that'll sit there at that level until either the legislature changes the cap or unless the school needs to utilize those funds, and then that difference is what would be considered at the next town meeting.
Thank you.
So, DJ, I have a few more slides. If,
Yeah, Deirdre, if you could just put it up real quick for the last few slides.
Because just
We all have
some of the positives,
Sure.
you know, the town has been very supportive. I was very thankful last May when the town approved the $938,000 in free cash and stabilization. I also think the town gets a good return on its investment. You know, we're in, all our schools are international Spanish academies. We've been recognized by U.S. News and World Reports. We've been recognized by the College Board, by the National Merit Scholarship Committee, Boston Magazine. Our students do well in rankings of schools locally and nationally. One of the things I'd like to point out here, in that U.S. News and World Rankings, the College Curriculum Breadth Index rank, Millis was ranked 626 out of over 25,000 schools across the country. And what that is that index is the percentage of seniors who take and pass multiple advanced placement courses, which are college-level courses in high school. And because of things like VHS and because of things like, you know, AP English language course and the other AP language courses we provide in-house, we're 626th in the nation in kids who have those opportunities. So yes, we're a small school, but our kids stretch themselves and our kids challenge themselves. And the slide before this one just is our MCAS scores are traditionally above the state average. I think in every grade level, in every test except for one on this chart, Millis exceeds the state average for meeting or exceeding standard. And you know, if you look at the grades 6, 7, 8, you'll see in English language arts and math in 5 out of the 6 results, our kids are double digits over the state averages. So, you know, we feel like our schools are providing a good return on our investment. And then the last slide is something that Boston Magazine has done for the last 3 years, and it's called bang for your housing dollar is what they label it. And Millis is one of 3. Millis High School is one of 3 high schools that has been on that list every year. And it's basically a list of how you perform compared to the demographic of median home price in the town. And so using the Boston Magazine rankings, Millis and Algonquin and Littleton High School have been on that list as for best bang for your housing dollars every year that they've had this. And so, you know, all these things that Mark, as Mark mentioned, have been building up over the years, we want to continue that. And we look forward to people's support as we do that.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Joyce.
I want to thank you for your time. This was very thorough. And I want, again, for the schools, we moved here 41 years ago. And one of the reasons we chose this town was because of the school system. And when I meet people who have got children, school-age children through the years, and then what made you move to, other than affordability, what made you come to Millis? The schools. And I don't think there's anyone here on this board that doesn't feel that we've had incredible, a really good school system for many, many years. And I don't think there's anyone on this board that wants to see it go the other way. So I thank you for presenting this and giving, not just us, but the people who are watching this, the information, and bringing up the good news about. I mean, and we don't want to see. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in this room, and there are a number of people here, more than usual, that want to see that happen. So, one, kudos for the job that you did for this evening, and kudos for our school system.
Thank you. So I know a lot of material came over today, which we'll all go through on our own time and review it. So I would imagine we probably have a few follow-up questions that will funnel your way.
Sure.
You know, walking away from today, you know, we'll follow up on the school choice on the different grades for information, the percentage of salaries for admin on a dollar and percentage basis. That would be great. But it's a very tough situation. I appreciate your thoroughness and letting us ask you a lot of different questions and bringing us up to speed. So unless anyone has any final questions, I think we are good.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, now that we're making the corner to the back nine here, so why don't we switch to our own budget, which I'll talk about. It's a one-pager, so I'll give you time to take that out. So just to give you a few highlights here, and some of the highlights are in asterisks at the bottom. So our part-time person is Deirdre, and we're going to increase her stipend up to $10,500, which is our first increase, as well as get a cost of living adjustment as well. Printing, that's gone up significantly. So the $12,500 reflects the more appropriate number. And I went through this with Deirdre, all these different numbers. ClearGov is a 5% annual increase. We just talked about a lot of annual increases. This is no different. This is what puts all the Millis financial and town data online, so we can review that for others and ourselves. Postage has gone up. That postage number is now about $2,400, and that covers both the spring and the fall town meeting. Newspaper ads, we have to publish when our pre-town meeting is, when the town meeting is, so that covers that. And dues and subscriptions, I know that Joyce and Kathy went to the Association Town Finance Committee from Mass Municipal Association in the fall, or was that last year?
No,
Fall? So
last year.
Yeah. So I wanted to, you know, crank that into our budget to allow people to, if they want to attend that, to do that. And, you know, I think with some of the webinars that we've seen from the MMA, you know, it's our own job to kind of keep our financial edge sharp. So, does anyone have any questions on the?
Do we need to approve it as a committee?
Do we need to approve it as a committee? I would think, I don't know.
I think we would. I don't know what you've done historically.
What?
What do the other committees do?
Doesn't hurt anybody.
What do the other boards do? Do they?
It's already in the select board budget.
Yeah, we put, that's.
Yeah.
we put in the select
So
board
they don't
budget.
approve their own budget? I mean, they don't, yeah.
They approved
Any
it.
objections to the budget?
Yeah.
All right.
Does anyone have any questions about it? No? Sound good? All right, thank you.
Pass along.
Okay, getting into the articles. So let's see here. Okay, how much energy do we all have here? Mike's gearing up. Do we want to try to, so between this meeting and next week on the 10th are going to be some marathon meetings. So the question is, how much do we want to get done in this meeting versus next week?
Until the first person drops.
Let's just go for it.
Let's do it,
So
all right.
we
Just wanted to
can't
take a
hear
temperature. Okay, so, with that said, I believe everyone should have the motions that was provided earlier today, and Deirdre passed that out. And my goal is to, if we can get through maybe 10 to 15 of these until someone drops, then that'll just take the pressure off for next week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, these are fast, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask, what we'll do during this process is we'll actually review we have the article list with each FinCom member. And if that member could read the motion and basically the message
As written.
We can do it as written.
as written.
Otherwise, we would be here for another.
Yeah, just as written.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. So if we can get a few of these that are all spelled out, then let's do that. Does that make sense with everybody? All right, so Article 1, we have Joyce.
As written.
Move to approve.
No, my motion is to approve the,
Yeah, you're,
the.
you'd recommend
bills.
approval.
I recommend approval.
Recommend approval?
Of motion, of Article 1.
Okay, so we can, okay, second, thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 1? No discussion, let's take a vote. Can we do mass vote versus individual vote, or what's the proper? So,
Aye.
all in favor for recommending Article 1, please say aye. Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Okay,
Mr. Chair,
yes, go ahead.
I move that the Finance Committee recommend dismissal of Article 2.
Second.
It's been recommended and seconded to dismiss Article 2. Any discussion?
Since I have this article, Mr. Kaczynski, why are we, is there no bills to pay?
Because the municipal government has done an outstanding job of balancing the budget this year and trying to stay
All right.
within budget.
That's what I like to hear.
And in working with the finance director, we determined within the last week that we do not believe we're going to need any transfers under this article.
Best article ever.
Fantastic. Any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor for dismissing Article 2, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose and abstain. Unanimous. Perfect. All right. I am going to table Article 3, which is the operating budget, and Article 4, the override budget, until next week, until Select Board meets on Monday, and we can finalize all the appropriate numbers. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Article 5, Jen.
I talked to Jim McKay, and for my 3 articles, I understand that's like the way we do it every year, so my recommendation is to approve them. So 5 for now.
Should we fix the verbiage on that, or?
Where are you looking?
No, just, I move that the Finance.
Yeah, you can kind of,
Move that we recommend.
yeah, do you recommend
Passage.
I
it?
move that we recommend, yes. that
Yeah.
The town vote to raise and appropriate from the sewer.
Second.
Second. It's been recommended and seconded that Article 5 is read as is. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
One no, okay. And any abstain? All right, H1, Article 5. Okay. And Jen, if you could take Article 6?
So I think this is the same language, but yeah, I move.
To recommend.
Recommend.
Yeah.
That we vote to move the town, vote to raise and appropriate from the water department receipts, the sums is written.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? The recommendation is to approve the Article 6 as is. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay. Article 7.
I move for the finance committee to recommend that the town vote to raise and appropriate from stormwater department receipts, the sums is written.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to recommend the approval of Article 7 as written. All those in favor, is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Those abstain? Okay, H1. Article 8.
Chair,
Yes.
I move that we recommend approval of Article 8, which is the consent article as written in the warrant.
Second.
It's been recommended and seconded that Article 8 be approved as written in the article. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? 9-0. Okay. All right, Kathy, number 9.
I'm sorry. I was having a conversation with someone.
Article 8's a few pages.
Article 9. I move that the town vote to transfer from the sewer enterprise refers on the $137,630 to fund the FY sewer infiltration and inflow investigation of the sewer system in Millis.
Seconded.
It's been recommended and seconded to approve Article number 9 as written. Discussion? All those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All in favor? All right. Number 10?
As written. The town vote.
Move to recommend.
Recommend.
Transfer water enterprise $187,000 to fund a lead service line inventory for the water system in Millis.
It's been recommended and seconded to approve Article 10 as written. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 9-0. Article number 11. Pete.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I move the Finance Committee recommend approval of the motion as written.
It's been motion/recommended that the Article 11 be approved as written. All discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 9-0.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I may, just to note on Article 12, originally, they had submitted a $60,000 number for that, but the Community Preservation Committee updated their request and is only requesting $50,000.
Yeah, he indicated that to us the other day.
Okay, so 50,000 is the correct number.
That's correct.
Okay. So,
Mr. Chair.
stand by. You know, you're good. Go ahead, Pete.
Regarding the language of motioning to recommend approval of a motion as written, if there are nitnoy changes made to these, we will have to revote them, and I would think we would not use as written. We would have just, in a very brief way, the transfer of funds or whatever it is, other than as written. If we do as written and they're not as written, because we know that these things will go through legal review, we will have to revote these. In my opinion, I don't,
So, I'm not a lawyer, but can we use as described?
that wouldn't be better.
Yeah, as outlined in the.
As outlined?
In the presented materials.
Are these the final versions that we voted on?
They're essentially final versions. I did just receive confirmation from town council just a few hours ago that he did approve the motions as to form.
Tell you what, why don't we say as written, and if it changes,
Yes.
let us know and we can redo them
Redo that
next
vote.
week.
Yep.
Does that work?
Fine.
Okay.
Fine, I just,
I will let you know if there's, you know.
Yeah, if there's any changes, please.
If it's a grammatical,
I understand.
First of all,
Yeah.
Deirdre's going to have this document, so this is what we voted on.
Yes.
If any of these change in any language, then we'd have to revote them.
yeah.
Correct.
I mean, if there's any change of any meaning, I will certainly let you know.
Correct. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Pete Ruby, I'm sorry, Pete Underhill. I know.
We're not friends anymore.
I know.
I'm the good-looking Pete.
Did we vote 12?
No.
I move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of the motion as written.
It's been recommended and seconded to approve Article 12 as written. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Article 12 passes. Article 13 is myself, which is capital planning. We have the numbers here, but the capital planning chair, Jonathan Berry, is going to present on Monday. So I would like to table this until next week and follow the proper procedure for that.
Yep.
That make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Getting off easy tonight. Let's see here. 14. Sarah.
I move to approve Article 14 as written. Second.
It's been motion/recommended to approve Article 14 as written. Any discussion? All those in favor, all those,
I have a question on that.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, on
This just got updated, yes.
Yeah.
All right, that answered my question.
So the 41K will
That's
be
the
on
amount we have.
the summary sheet.
We had as of June 30th, 2023. Assuming the town meeting approves this, all future funds will automatically go into this account.
Is that good, Jody?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that will come out of those opioid settlement funds.
Yes.
Yes.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving Article 14 as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? All right. Article 15.
Move that we vote that we recommend approval of Article 15 as written.
Second.
It's been recommended and seconded to approve Article 15 as written. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like them to be white police vehicles. No, I'm not getting into that.
Or you can see on the inside, you can see through the.
Yeah.
No air conditioning, please.
Yeah.
No,
Points taken, all right.
no questions.
Sorry.
No, that's all good.
It'll come up at meeting.
That's right.
Well,
Any further discussion? No. Okay. All those in favor of approving Article 15 as written, please say aye. Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Pete.
I move that we recommend approval of Article 16 as written.
Second.
It's been recommended and seconded to approve Article 16 as written. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving Article 16 as written, please say aye.
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 Any opposition? Abstain? Abstain, no. 9-0.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move that we recommend approval of Article 17 as written.
Second.
It's been recommended and seconded to approve Article 17 as written. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor of approving Article 17 as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? 9-0.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Pete.
I recommend that we recommend approval of Article 18 as written.
It's been recommended and seconded to approve Article 18 as written. Discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just, if the town administrator, if you could please elaborate again what this entails, remind us.
Certainly. So essentially, every week, on a regular basis, and then on occasion when needed, the warrants for the town's payroll and expenses have to be approved. Under state law, unless there's a local charter provision that says otherwise, the executive authority of the town has to be the one to sign those documents. So in Millis, that has been the select board.
Okay.
And that at times has created issues of timing and because we sometimes have urgent warrants that come up with short notice that need to be reviewed and signed. So that has created some issues in the past. And the select board has discussed this over the past year or so. And this was a proposal that came up a number of years ago. But when the town decided not to move forward with any of the charter changes at that time, this was, along with the other ones, removed. And the board feels that this is an important change for the effective administration of government in the town. And again, it would allow the town administrator to sign those warrants once they've been approved by the finance office.
So it'll improve efficiencies. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, it improves efficiencies, as Mike said, but it also improves controls. I mean, right now you have 3 volunteers who don't deal with the payroll cycle or the accounts payable on any kind of regular basis. Receiving a warrant that's 20 pages long, that has to be reviewed, signed off on, and approved in an hour. Otherwise, payroll doesn't go out, or we don't pay our vendors. This is putting the professional that we hired to run our town in charge of running our town. His head's on the line if it's wrong. He's got the time, and I'm all about control. He knows that he has to get it right. He's the one that follows it. He's responsible for it now, and that's what is appropriate. It's not 2 people, 2 of the 3 of us remembering to check our email at the right moment, reviewing 20 pages of data that we may know nothing about. I mean, my review of payroll is anybody paid higher than Mike. That's my first step. I do a lot more at my real job, and that's what I would expect out of Mike. So those are the type of things that I do more here. I look for duplicates, but it's his responsibility. It's the town administrator's role. It's something that we believe is the power should be vested in him. That's why we made the change.
Thank you for clarifying and explaining.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
is it still 2 out of the 3 sign? You need 2 signatures? And then back in the day, the now Assistant Town Administrator had permission to sign one of the, is that still the case?
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the actual warrant itself. There used to be one selectman signing, and then she had permission to sign from another one.
I believe that once, if we did have authority, that was for the physical signature, I believe.
Please speak into the microphone.
So that was a few years ago when there was a select board person who was out of the country on vacation and had given the authority to the assistant town administrator.
So, but you don't have to be out of the country. A select board member could call and say, can you sign on my behalf on any given,
I don't know what the particulars of that would be. I know that when the warrants are published, I review them. If I'm on vacation or out of the office that day, the town accountant can sign on my behalf, and then it goes to the select board for signature. We need 2 of the 3, plus mine, or the town accountants, in order for a warrant to be processed, in order for them to be paid. So what they're asking for is efficiencies of being able to process these things, because it holds the treasurer's office up until they're able to get the approvals on everything. Mike is typically in the office when these things happen. I think it's just helping with efficiencies, as well as somebody that's on site that could actually go in and look at the documentation if there were a question.
Mr. Chair?
Hang on, Pete. Is that, do you want to clarify that with follow-up?
I'll let Pete know.
Okay, go ahead, Pete.
What is the periodic town payroll? What's the value?
Every other week.
It's about $1 million.
$20 million?
$1 million.
$1 million. And what is your existing warrant authority? Dollar
I
figure.
don't have any authority to sign.
No contracts, no, you don't sign any warrants?
No, these are
Not
the
payroll, I know, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to
I
gauge
do
whether this
have-
is an expansion of your authority, or is it just a administrative efficiency? Like, that, to me, that's germane. Is it a material change to what you're already doing, whether it's payroll or contracts? Makes no difference to me. We trust you, presumably, to sign warrants up to, I don't know, $10, $20 million for a contractor's invoice or something to that effect?
I can sign up to $10,000 on a contract. Invoices, there's not a limit on the invoices, but ultimately, those invoices show up in the general expense warrant, which has to be approved by the select board currently.
And we're not talking about that.
We're not talking about, we're talking about the payroll and expense warrants. Individual invoices, I can approve those, once a contract's been signed. The contract is over 10,000.
I think I know, obviously, the select board's in favor of this. Are you in favor of this?
I am. This is not uncommon. A lot of other communities that have either town managers or administrators have the authority to sign payroll and expense warrants. That's true.
Can I just, did all of a sudden the payroll go weekly, or is it still every other week?
You know, payroll is weekly, but accounts payable warrants are weekly. So it's the payrolls every other week, and the AP warrants are weekly.
I'm just concerned that there isn't a executive select board member that is reviewing the warrant, at least 1 out of the 3.
Mr. Chair, I will say this doesn't preclude the select board members from requesting or coming in to review the warrants at any time they'd like to come in to do so, or question the warrant, or if they ask for the warrant to be held for some reason, we would hold it. This is merely allowing us on a regular basis to be able to process these in a timely manner. We have had a number of situations where we've had to have warrants done the same day. If we have an instance where an employee is terminated, they have to be paid their remaining salary and benefits on the day they're terminated.
Yep.
And in those cases, it could be difficult to contact the majority and get those approvals in a timely fashion.
So it creates efficiencies, but there's still checks and balances in place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The board at any time could request that the warrants be emailed to them or to review the warrants, or if they have a concern about any bills coming through, they have the full authority to do that. And certainly, if a select board member requested the warrant be held, it would be held.
Review. Go ahead, Mike.
The current provision is a throwback to the days when the selectmen ran everything. There were no town administrators, and most towns now have updated, so the town administrators are handling the day-to-day operations that they would normally in a city or anybody else like that. So I don't see that being an issue.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Pete.
Would it make sense to add like a quarterly review by the select board of the warrant, of the payroll warrant, quarterly data? Where they're required to do it? If they don't already, yeah.
Do you want to answer that, Craig?
Yeah, we'll review it as needed. I mean, we do look at it, and I would continue to look at it because I'm curious, but I just don't have backup to any source documentation. If I question something, I have to put a hold on everything, call Carol. Carol has to get somebody to pull out the source documents. They have to scan it over to me. I have to look over in the office at work. I'm not in town to come over and sign. Everything's done by email now. When I do sign, I approve the warrant of whatever in an email that I email back. So it's very little wet signature. I would personally be much more comfortable having Mike, with access to the primary source documents, be the one whose neck is on the line to get this right.
Oh,
And
so
I
you
think-
don't show, excuse me, Mr. Chair, you
Yeah,
don't
go
show,
ahead.
you don't have to physically go into the office anymore to sign?
No, we can do that over email. It's not so much, for me, it's not so much the timing. I mean, there are times when people are tied up all day long, Ellen's on vacation, or I'm on vacation. I've approved them in New Orleans while I'm sitting on a bench, but I'm looking at it on my phone. Not the most conducive way to get it right. I'm much more confident with the quality of work we'd get with those two people, or the people in those positions, being the two people that are primarily responsible for signing it. And that's my concern, that I think we'll get a better quality of work, putting aside the timeliness factor.
Thank you.
Yep. Any further discussion? Yeah. So it's been moved and seconded to approve Article 18 as written. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Abstain? 20, 18, okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This would be me, Article 19. I move we recommend approval of Article 19 as written.
Second.
Oh, thank you.
It's been recommended and seconded to approve Article 19 as written. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving Article 19 as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? 9-0.
Article 20. That would be me again. I move we recommend approval of Article 20 as written.
Second.
Thank you.
It's been recommended and seconded to approve Article 20 as written. Any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I don't know what it is.
Oh, I can tell you.
So we can have them tell us.
Oh, I.
Oh, go-
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
Go ahead,
I do
Mike.
You
know.
can practice, Joyce.
No, I do know. It's amazing.
We're
I
not doubting
know.
you. Go ahead, Mike.
So basically, under the HERO Act, this is a local acceptance option that the legislature recently approved that allows for qualifying veterans to be able to get certain exemptions from their property tax bills. So I think we estimated
It
that.
increases, right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what happens on this, it doubles the amount of the exemption for the veteran. And so
I don't, oh, okay, go ahead.
it's under the section of 22 on the exemptions and so it's that category. And
What's the current exemption?
the current exemption is, one of them is $825 it would go up to $1,650.
So that, oh, yeah.
It depends.
Yeah, another one's $1,000, it would go up to $2,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
That's all I wanted to know.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving Article 20 as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 5-0. Article 21, Sarah.
I move that we recommend approval of Article 21 as written.
Second.
It's been recommended and seconded to approve Article 21 as written. Discussion. I have a point. Deirdre, could you please update the article list and replace Joyce's name with Sarah's name?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving Article 21 as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? And last, Jody, Article 22.
I would recommend that we hold off on voting this.
I think that's a good idea.
We know what it is.
Until the select board meets.
Yep, agreed.
Mr. Chair, I move that we reconsider an article.
Okay, go ahead.
And maybe that's probably more official than I'm looking for. Would you entertain discussion in advance of a vote, just general discussion on the warrant and especially Articles 3 and 4?
I would. We can discuss it in depth next week, but if we want a general discussion, I think that'd be appropriate.
I'm fine with discussing in depth, even though we don't have real numbers in front of us. And the reason that I personally want to discuss it is because, one, for prep for next week, there's no reason we know roughly what's going to happen. I'm also not going to be here next week, and so I apologize for that.
Okay.
I am in favor of the Article 4, the override. I want to go on record as saying that.
Okay, thank you.
I think that there are difficult decisions to be made. I think that the professionals that are involved, the select board, the school committee, I think they've done their diligence to put together a good vote, or excuse me, a good proposal, a good recommendation. I am a bit disappointed that there weren't deliberate cuts considered in addition to a tax override. I think I'm in the minority on that, but that's okay. You know, I think the most responsible thing to do, again, difficult decisions, and I'm not trying to criticize anybody, but before we look to raise taxes beyond the 2.5% threshold, that ought to have involved a real look and a deep dive into our budgets and what we can cut. I'm not aware of any real deep dive. I know that the school looked at cuts as discussed tonight. I think the town should have done the same thing. That said, you know, I'm not going to stand in the way, and my support is for Article 4.
Any further discussion? Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I agree with some of the that you just said. I think that we have the same discussions we had last year, and I think we're going to have the same discussions in years to come. We need to have a school budget, like we need to have town budgets and town services that fit within the amount of money that we have or that we can raise. There is no unlimited funds of money available to any town, and the passage of this override may not happen because it hasn't happened in other towns. So we need to seriously look at, you know, where we can save money in any way possible. I can't put my judgment in front of the school committees or the superintendents. I don't run that system. I can't tell them what to cut or not to cut. But I think that we need to start looking on a long-term basis as to exactly what system what municipal services we want, what school services we want, based on what we can afford. Not what we want, but what we can afford. And I think until we do that, we still may run into situations in which we have to now lay off teachers and do things that are more drastic than perhaps we might need to if we looked at things a little differently. Again, I'm not putting my judgment in front of the school committee, and I'll probably vote for the override as well. And I haven't made my mind up yet. But Again, I think we have to start looking at everything, from ground zero, in school systems, municipal, everything, because we're reaching a point where we're approaching $20 a thousand. And the values of properties in Millis have gone up dramatically, which means that, an average taxpayer could be paying $12,000 a year in real estate taxes. And at that point, it becomes untenable for a lot of people. So that may be where we end up, but I don't disagree with you. I think that we need to look at everything going forward, and, if there are cuts to be made, then we make them incrementally rather than all at once.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, regarding the wages, does that include insurance, clothing allowance, cleaning, or is the $180,000 for just the salary?
You're looking at the 180,000 for police and 95K for fire?
Right. Because I think the average, the family plan is $20,000 a year that the town pays. I think that's what the DPW put, he had everything listed in
That would be
his.
employee benefits.
So-
those would fall under the benefit piece of it. And, but on what you see in front of you are the salaries.
Salaries only. So where does it come in about all the extras that are going to be for these, what did it come out to, 4 employees? That will just come out of free cash each year, or? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you.
No, the benefits line item, which is primarily for these employees, the health insurance and the pension, those amounts are in those lines. The health insurance, we do have, we usually range anywhere from, I think, 5 to 8 additional employees in health insurance to be safe every year. So those numbers are in there. We do try to make sure that the health insurance, we have enough funding in there to cover the year. And having as many employees as we do, that does fluctuate year to year. But we have accounted for that in the benefits line.
I just wish, Mr. Chair, that it would be known what the actual cost to the town is going to be for each employee.
Do you think those numbers are obtainable in terms of, on the benefit side?
Well, we can certainly provide estimates.
Okay.
I mean, it really does
Depends on what the
depend.
individual does.
It depends if the individual is a single plan,
Yep.
a family plan.
Goes with spouse, yep.
There are cases where they maybe have a spouse that actually has a company or whatever that actually has better insurance.
Yep.
So all we can do is provide estimates.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I just want to comment on the budget cuts. We provided a budget that is absolutely within the means of what the town can support. The municipal budget and the school budget, without the override, is all that we can afford.
Yeah.
That means we have built a budget that cuts, I didn't count, was it 15 or was it 18?
15
You know,
plus, yeah.
Yeah, positions. That's gone. That's not in the budget we built. So we're not building this unrealistic budget.
Yeah.
On the municipal side, we didn't put in any of the needed positions. We put those in the override. So again, we had a 4.1% growth available. Excuse me, I'm fighting off a cough. But we had a 4.1% growth available. That's what we grew by. We didn't go higher than that. We didn't put those positions in and then say we need to raise taxes to do it. We're giving people a choice on it. I mean, my question to you is, would you like us to take that, would you have liked us to, in the school, to take those budgets below what we can afford to do? So cut further into the school. Instead of 18 positions we didn't have, take 19.
Not what anybody said.
Okay, I'm just curious what you mean when you say reduce the budget.
I
A municipality lives on the budget
Yeah.
that it can afford.
Correct.
Our job is not to make value for shareholders. That's not what a town does. Our town takes all the money that it has through legal means that it gets, taxation,
Yeah.
and spends it in the best way possible to benefit the customer,
Yeah.
the townspeople.
Do you want to clarify?
Yeah.
I just simply, I don't mean to argue about and be
Yeah.
argumentative, but I think that the town across the board ought to look at what services it is paying for and/or providing that it no longer needs. Or look for more efficient ways to provide those services so that the budget can be reduced, so that when we ask for more, we don't have to ask for as much.
I understand what you're saying. I will say that with respect, that has been done. I don't know that you can say that Cutting council on aging, cutting library, that's the only way we're going to find those things, police, fire, DPW. We chose not to bring those in as, extra items in the base budget. That's why we're doing the override, and that's what the override's for. We will provide a budget that is fair, meets the needs, and doesn't cut services to the residents that we can afford to cut. And anything beyond that, we're gonna ask for an override for. Hopefully, we don't have to ask for an override for the next 5 years, but there's gonna be override asks again, because we'll never get new services, additional hours at the Council on Aging, additional hours at the library, more police officers, fire, more DPW workers, without being able to ask for an override. So it's gonna come up again. But I don't, and I just believe that the town's responsibility is to spend the money that it collects from the taxpayers responsibly, to provide the best level of service. So.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mike.
So that wasn't the point. The point was that there's a $1 million deficit in one of the budgets within the town. We heard from the fire department and police department why they needed the increases, and it all made a lot of sense, because it's increased service that they needed to provide. And that's not, there was no criticism of the town budget this year or anything like that. There's no criticism of the school budget. It's just that we're reaching deficits, significant deficits, and, we can't depend on overrides going forward all the time. So if we look at the budgets going forward and build, say, a school system that we can afford with the money that we have, this is not unique to Millis. Every other town is going through the same thing right now. It's not unique to Millis. But, starting from square one sometimes and looking at it again, what do we really need? What works? Maybe it's exactly where we are. Maybe it is. But, today we received the budget. There's a, 70-page document that has a lot of detail. We got it this afternoon. We had no time to look at this. So, it's hard for us to say, okay, I'm not going to rubber stamp everything and say I'm happy with everything, not knowing what the full detail is. It may be absolutely perfect, but we'd like to see that detail, and we'd like to know that everything's been done possible to live within the budget. If that's the case, great.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Go
ahead, Joyce.
All due respect to what you're saying, Mike, I think one of the biggest problems and why the school is in this awful situation is because of the 14% increase. I mean, it's nothing that it's nothing that anyone did that did as far as mismanagement. Governor Baker decided to give a 14% increase and then leave. Well, 14% is a huge impact on a lot of towns. We're a small town, and that's why we're in a deficit. It's not mismanagement. I mean, honestly, I think they really are. I mean, I've been here for many years, and I think they're at the bare bones. I see what the teachers, and I have grandchildren who are experiencing the new way of learning, and it's tough. I mean, I did ask about class sizes and why is it 22 versus 30 when my kids went to school. But when my kids went to school, they didn't have all the social media bombarding them and all the cell phones and everything that these kids are going through. They didn't have COVID. They didn't have two parents working to try and make ends meet. I was fortunate. I worked around my kids' schedules so that I could be an at-home mom. Lots of parents can't do that. And, what I saw this evening, even though we've gotten lots of things late. It's not just from the school, it's from lots of departments. So we got a 70-page thing late this afternoon. Unfortunately, that happened. But what they presented tonight, I think they've really tried so hard to see where they could cut. They already made cuts last year. But when you think about it, it's the 14% increase that put us in this position.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's all. That's good.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Kathy.
do you have a, anyone else
Go
have a
ahead.
question?
Nope, go ahead.
I'm just hoping that the select board considers future overrides. Where's the money from Tri-County coming from? Where is the PFAS plants coming from? you know, the imposition, that's why I voted against the enterprise funds, because I still don't think, contrary to what the select board, if you look at your FY '23 goals, you stated that the water and sewer and enterprise would be independent and not, the town would not be any more dependent on them. And also, I don't think that the town has looked into increasing fees, generating income. And I believe the school made a good pitch, but I'm not sold on the town yet. I'm not sold that the town, that the money needed for that outweighs what will be needed for Tri-County, what will be needed for the water and sewer enterprise funds at this stage, this year.
Well, just to address the one point that's relevant to the override.
Yep.
The DPW labor will directly reduce the water and sewer imbalance.
Excuse me, let me just, I know that you're gonna say
Yeah.
that, but the override will cost the water and sewer users. So you're taking from one to the other. I can't buy that one.
Well, the
That
only
should be
way,
maybe-
there's
it
going to
should-
have to be a
excuse me,
transfer
excuse
of
me.
funds, yes.
How come that can't be out of a free cash amount? That small amount of money cannot come out of free cash for that staff person, as compared to double the salary for police and fire. Why does it have to be? I just feel that it should have been, and I said this before, it should have been separate overrides to give the people a choice to decide which departments they feel they should spend their hard-earned dollars on, Craig. And
But it's
that's
a,
all
it's
it's
a,
about.
yeah, and it's a town override.
Right, we looked at a municipal, a town-wide override
Yeah.
for all, we didn't want to pit one school, one department against another department. We've always done it this way. I think that it makes sense. We're a small town. We have to value both areas equally. As far as using free cash for recurring budgetary positions, I wouldn't do that. I am looking at just.
You did it last year,
Yeah,
right?
hired people.
No, I'm just commenting, yeah.
Yeah, we put it in the budget last
Yeah.
year, but that was a one-time deal
Correct.
to bail us
Correct.
out.
That was
Yeah.
one time.
Correct.
And
Yeah, yeah.
we are looking at the marijuana, not HCA funds, but the marijuana 3% tax, which continues, to see if that will fund Tri-County. That may be just about enough money to pay for the Tri-County debt. But that's going into free cash also, but that's an option. We're looking at options to try to avoid future overrides for things that we don't need them for. And that is an interesting piece.
So do you think that, I'm sorry, do you think that you could avoid the override on Tri-County with that, huh?
For a few years.
For a few years?
I think that we got to look at how free cash comes in. That's why we haven't really had a lot of discussions on it. But the number coincidentally is about 320,000.
Same amount of money, yeah.
It's about the same amount. And it just seems that that's a recurring revenue source that is open for consideration. Carol hasn't heard a lot of that yet, so Carol's leaving.
But her
but-
successor will.
Yeah, but those
Well,
are,
what happens
that's a
to-
question.
Yeah, by the way.
What happens to that 300,000 that's been used in the operating budget, Ms. Carroll?
Are you
in
talking
free
about the
cash.
HCA funds?
The,
Which 300,000 that you're
Tax.
referring
Marijuana
to?
tax.
The
That's
tax.
different. I'm
That
talking
goes
about.
That's
down
separate
into what?
revenue.
I'm talking about a separate set of
No,
revenue.
for
We
the-
get,
for the
So, right
finance
now,
director, where does
any money
the-
that comes in for the cannabis,
yeah.
whether it's the HCA or the cannabis, 3%,
Mhm.
is not currently in our budgeted number for revenue. So all of that would flow to free cash. Now, if you wanted to, as a town, denote that that money is to be set aside for something else, now you won't have it as part of your general operating
Operating,
budget. It
So
has
you're
to be
down
removed
300.
from that. So either way, you're gonna start a little conflict
Right.
of, we gotta pay this, how are we gonna pay it?
Right.
Well, if you pull it out
So
of
you're
your
saying
local
you're gonna use it
receipts,
for something else, but
then-
you haven't figured
Yeah.
out where
Right,
it's coming from?
exactly.
Or how to
Exactly.
Right.
replenish that?
Exactly.
Well, when free cash was running at over $2 million, the 320, and I don't know, that's why I want to see what it comes in next year and the year after. There's a few years of looking at this. That 328 was part of it. We've devoted for roads, for the police officer injury fund, for the special ed
The
stable.
special ed,
So that money was
320,000,
going places. We can prioritize where that money goes and how much it is. That's why I need to see what future years' free cash looks like before I can commit to
Yeah.
anything or make a final proposal.
And I think the reality is, through all the discussion here, is that the override is its own financial speed bump that we're wrestling with and discussing now. And then the school project will be another discussion with its own set of pros and cons. And then, Kathy, to your point, the PFAS treatment plant will be another one with pros and cons, and throw in Tri-County and throw in a diminishing HCA. Those are hurdles that will be coming down the line. But I think, rather than trying to solve for it all in one setting, that the override and what I see, listening to the departments, school, as well as the fire, the police, and DPW, is the town is growing. It has needs. And I think that's the common theme that we've heard throughout. And that's what we're dealing with right now. That's my-
Mr. Chair, I just
Yeah.
want to add that, I don't know if anybody, maybe the town administrator, you listened to what the Speaker of the House of Representatives said about the FY '26 budget, that there's going to be drastic cuts along the line because of the increase in what's coming into the state now, people-wise. And, if that gets cut, then, I just like to see a little more forecasting on behalf of the town on what's coming down the pike, all avenues. Thanks, Craig.
Yeah. Any further discussion? No? All right, so let's continue.
You want a 3?
And, say again?
You want
Do
a
you have another
discussion on
number?
3? No? Okay.
Come on.
Pete, we're gonna miss you next week. Why don't we shift to something a little lighter, which is approval of the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes, Finance Committee minutes of March 20th as written.
Second.
It's been recommended and seconded to approve the March 20th FinCom meeting minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain?
Abstain.
Abstain?
I wasn't here.
Okay. Any liaison updates? I'll cover CPC next week. If that is it, I will take a motion.
Second.
Been a-
Third, fourth, and fifth.
Been a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next week a lot lighter of a
Yeah.